Chapter 280. He replied slowly, "It's all in the past, but I can't forgive her or let her go." As he spoke, he took out a handkerchief from his chest pocket. Inside it was a well-wrapped bank card. He looked at her. "There's more than 5 million yuan in here." 5 million yuan. "Yes," he continued. "This is the additional remuneration that your previous employer gave you." This was a check for 5 million yuan given to him by Mu Yage's assistant. He did not touch a single cent and deposited it all into this card. Later on, the money he earned from his part-time job was also deposited into this card. Although it was not much, it was still a token of his sincerity. He saved this money for Yun Shusher's dowry when she got married in the future. He was already old and did not have much capability. He was no longer as spirited as he was when he was young. His monthly salary was about 3,000 yuan. After deducting all his living expenses, he had not touched a single cent in the card for the past few years. He had always kept this card with him. Even Li Qin did not know that there was so much money in it. This was to prevent her from getting greedy when she found out. Even Yun Shusher thought that this sum of money had been used to repay debts back then. When Yun Yeqing came looking for Yun Shusher after Yun Na's accident, he wanted to find an opportunity to discuss this matter with her. He thought that with his daughter's accident, he had no choice but to ask Yun Shusher to withdraw tens of thousands of yuan from the card for urgent needs. He thought that she would agree to it given her gentle and considerate personality. Who knew that he would suddenly find out the truth of what happened 6 years ago? His world had been turned upside down and he could not accept it for a while. Now that he had made up his mind to divorce Li Qin, this card should be returned to its rightful owner. Although the property prices in the capital are rising day by day, the money in this card is enough to buy a decent house. Although I've divorced that woman, we're still father and daughter. If you're free in the future, you can bring Yu home to have a meal with me. That's enough. Dad, this money, Yun Yeqing said, this is your money. I didn't tell you earlier because I was afraid that woman would remember it. Daddy was keeping it for you, and now I'm returning it to its rightful owner. With Yu around, you must be living a tight life. Now that Yu was hospitalized, it was time to spend money. This sum of money should be able to solve the problem. Thank you, Dad. Yun Shusher took the bank card and smiled. Dad, you divorced her, but you also said that our father-daughter relationship is still there. You should live with us. I'll take care of you and Yu. Yun Yeqing hesitated. That's not good. It's not like you don't know that woman's character. Greedy for glory and splendor, he had always been used to being extravagant. If I were to stay with you, she would definitely come over and make a fuss again. I'm afraid that you and Yu wouldn't be safe. Now that you're successful, you can't let her drag you down. Yun Yeqing spoke with sincerity. He was truly thinking of the mother-son pair. After all, given Li Qin's character, she would definitely not let the matter rest. Yun Yeqing used that woman to refer to Li Qin. It was clear that he was extremely tired of this failed marriage. Chapter 281. Yun Shusher replied, What's there to be afraid of, Dad? As long as you don't let yourself be blinded by them and see their true colors, I'll be at ease. I'll take care of you in the future. Do you want me to watch you grow old and have no one to depend on? You've raised me since I was young, I'll definitely repay this favor. Repay? It was clear that he owed her so much. Yun Yeqing was both vexed and touched. His lips trembled as he nodded repeatedly. Although Yun Shusher was not his biological daughter, she was more filial than a biological daughter. Although he had given birth to a good-for-nothing ingrate, he was relieved to have such a considerate daughter like Yun Shusher. This time, he did not reject her and only said, Let's talk about it some other time. If I divorce her, she'll definitely not take it lying down. When the time comes, she'll make a fuss about splitting the family assets. You'll definitely be implicated. Splitting the family assets. Yun Shishir said angrily, do you still want to split the family assets with that kind of woman? I won't share it with her. Fortunately, I didn't do anything stupid back then. When I bought this house, I registered it under your name. Even if we get divorced, she can forget about getting any benefits. This is an evil creature she created, so she should bear the consequences herself. I, Yun Yeching, have never mistreated her. Even if we get divorced, my conscience will be clear. It's been hard on you. Yun Shishir was a little stunned. That small 3-bedroom apartment was a second-hand house he bought back then, yet it was registered under her name. When the father-daughter pair walked out of the balcony, they saw that the ward was filled with nurses. Yun Yeching was stunned when he saw the handsome man standing by the bed. He seemed to have seen him before. At her father's question, Yun Shishir sized up Mu Yaja and said guiltily, he. This is my university professor. His surname is Mu. He's so young. Yun Yeching was a little speechless. The man in front of him clearly looked to be in his late 20s. He was handsome and looked very young. The man raised his head. His perfect and exquisite facial features and handsome face made him look like a high and mighty noble. Just one look from him was enough to make one feel intimidated. He was clearly so young, but he looked extremely mature and reserved. His every movement had an extraordinary bearing. In front of him, it made others feel ashamed of their inferiority. Even Yun Yeching could not help feeling uneasy. So, you're Shishir's university professor. Nice to meet you. You look so young. Mu Yaja also cooperated and nodded, but did not say anything. His attitude was very cold. What's going on? Yun Shishir was surprised to see that the ward was full of nurses. Change wards, Mu Yaja said succinctly. Only then did Yun Shishir recall that the director had previously mentioned that he wanted to change their ward to a special class ward. But, why were there so many nurses gathered here? She saw those nurses crowding around the ward's entrance. Their eyes were either stunned or filled with admiration as they sized up Mu Yaja. Initially, when the inpatient department director informed the young patient in this ward that he wanted to change to a special ward, a few nurses rushed over with the bed. However, as soon as they entered the ward, they saw this handsome man sitting in front of the bed, gently caressing the child's sleeping face. That perfect, godlike side glance instantly killed everyone. Gosh, the family member of a patient in Ward 702 is so handsome. How handsome is he? Chapter 282. For a moment, many nurses, who had nothing to do, gathered in the ward. The moment they saw Mu Yaja, everyone's eyes widened. Oh, God! He's so handsome and tall. He should be 9 meters tall. He's a whole shoulder taller than me. Oh, God! I wonder if he has a girlfriend. Is this child his son? He looks so much like him. Hence, the nurse's eyes darted back and forth between Mu Yaja and Yun Tianyu. Some were suspicious, some were shocked, some were disappointed, and some were desolate. Is he already married? Oh, God! This child should be 6 years old. Sigh. It's hopeless. A group of people whispered among themselves. Although their voices were not loud, they still disturbed the little lad, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. Yu Yu's brows furrowed slightly. Smacking his lips, he seemed to be really disturbed and kicked the blanket in dissatisfaction. Seeing that he was disturbed, Mu Yaja's face instantly turned frosty. Seeing this, Yun Shishir's heart ached a little. She walked over to the nurses and said, "I'm sorry. Please keep your voices down. Don't crowd around the ward door, lest you wake the child." Seeing Yun Shishir blocking her way, an intern nurse pushed her to the side in dissatisfaction. It's almost dawn now. The nurse on duty will be here soon to take his blood pressure. Besides, aren't you guys changing wards? Isn't it good that he's awake now? That's right. Some parents these days spoil their children too much. Yun Shishir's face was tainted with a hint of anger. Is this your work attitude? What do you mean? The intern nurse, who must have just graduated, retorted without knowing the gravity of the situation. Someone at the side immediately tugged at her sleeve. That's enough. Let's not talk about it anymore. We were a little loud just now. Are you that child's mother? The intern nurse suddenly gossiped. What's your relationship with this gentleman? I just heard from this woman that this man is her university professor. I heard on the news that a university professor is keeping a student as his mistress. Someone speculated in a low voice, could it be that this child is their private? Is that enough? Yun Shishir flew into a rage out of humiliation. Do I need you to inquire about our relationship? As soon as her voice fell, she saw their eyes widen in horror as they looked behind her. Yun Shishir turned around belatedly, only to see Mu Yaja standing behind her. He impatiently swept his gaze over the crowd surrounding the door, his voice as cold as ice. Scram. There was a hint of sharpness in his tone. With just one word, the crowd instantly dispersed. Clean and direct. The ward instantly became much quieter. Yun Shishir sighed and was a little speechless. The procedures to transfer to another ward were completed very quickly. Not long after, the department director led 2 nurses to push a bed into the room and carried the little lad onto it. Yun Yeching supported the bed and left with the department director. Before he left, he reminded Shishir, it's already morning. Professor Mu, thank you very much for coming to visit Yu. You haven't rested for the whole night, so let Shishir send you downstairs. Mu Yaja exchanged glances with him, his eyes slightly cold. Yun Yeching was intimidated by his gaze. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he hurriedly left. Chapter 283. Yun Shishir told him that this man was her university professor. He was not a 3-year-old child even though he had complimented him on the surface. It was clear that Shishir was deliberately hiding this from him. Even though he was unsure of this man's identity, when he compared the father and son's appearance, he immediately returned to his senses. Thus, he could roughly guess this man's identity. He should be that mysterious employer from 6 years ago. He did not point it out as he was afraid that Shishir would be embarrassed. Yun Yeching escorted Yun Tianyo's bed and left. The ICU was on the 15th floor. Before he left, he did not forget to remind Shishir to go back to rest and come back to the hospital to replace him. Yun Shishir thought for a moment and nodded. She could go back to get some of Yu's clothes to change into. At the elevator entrance, Yun Shishir said, Mu Yaja, it's getting late. You should go back. Mu Yaja's expression was tinged with anger as he cocked a brow. Are you chasing me away? I saw that you didn't sleep last night, so I'm afraid that you're tired. Mu Yaja's expression softened instantly, and a hint of mockery flashed in his eyes. Oh, so you're feeling sorry for me? Think whatever you want. Yun Shishir was a little annoyed as she said angrily, don't blame me when you don't have the energy to work. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. With one hand in his pocket, he leaned over slightly and whispered into her ear, I've always been energetic. Haven't you experienced it yourself? His words were clearly hinting at something. Yun Shishir bit her lower lip as her cheeks flushed red all the way to her ears. She glared at him in embarrassment and annoyance. Ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about. Ding. The elevator door opened. Yun Shishir was about to step into the elevator when she was pushed into a corner and slammed into the cold wall. She could not help but widen her eyes in shock. Before she could react, the man's tall body was already pressing against her. It was a camera's blind spot. He had an ulterior motive. The elevator door closed. At this moment, only the two of them were left in the narrow space. Yun Shishir was shocked and looked up at him in fear. Muyaja lowered his head and reached out to hold her chin tightly. His long and narrow eyes curled up devilishly. His eyes were deep and heavy. He let out an evil laugh and leaned closer to her face. Staring into her helpless eyes, he said in a low and hoarse voice, "Little liar, you're really interesting." "You. What are you doing?" Yun Shishir turned her face away in a panic, but he pulled her face back and forced her to meet his gaze. You usually look so obedient, but I didn't expect you to be so clever when it comes to lying." She was startled and her face flushed red unnaturally. She had no choice but to lie. How could he tell the truth in front of his father? Could it be that he had to confess to his father? This was undoubtedly tearing open his scabbed scar. Yun Yeching had always been brooding over the contract from 6 years ago. He was annoyed at himself for not being capable enough to let his most beloved daughter become a surrogate. If she were to say this, her father would definitely be in a tight spot without a doubt. He, on the other hand, had followed her into the hospital and caught her off guard. Now, he was blaming her. Yun Shishir averted her eyes and did not look at him. She pursed her lips as if she were sulking, but in the man's eyes, she looked a little childish and adorable. "Professor." Chapter 284. "Little thing, why don't you tell me what I've taught you?" As he said that, he reached out and rubbed her chest heavily. He lowered his head and bit her lips, the tip of his tongue rubbing against her lips as he smiled devilishly. "Is it this?" He didn't teach her anything good, but he did teach her a lot of things that she shouldn't have learned. Yun Shishir exclaimed and slapped his hand away forcefully. Her eyes were filled with anger. "You! What are you doing?" This was an elevator. It could stop at any time and people could come in. How could he be so brazen in the elevator? Didn't he know how to restrain himself? As she thought about it, Yun Shishir felt ashamed and indignant. Her phone rang at the right time. She heaved a sigh of relief and hoped that the man would pick up the phone so that she could escape this disaster. However, Muyaja didn't seem to have any intention of letting her off. He even ignored the loud ringtone and took a step closer to her. His slender fingers brushed her face gently as he narrowed his eyes and carefully studied her face. Suddenly, he sighed softly. What a seductive face. Look at those innocent and pure eyes with a hint of coquettishness. One look was enough to seduce one's soul. Muyaja lowered his head and lightly pecked the corner of her lips with an ambiguous smile. Has anyone ever told you that you look like a vixen? Yun Shishir turned her head away, ignoring the man's provocation. He suddenly lowered his head and 2 warm breasts covered her. His large palm rubbed her waist unceremoniously and pinched it hard, causing her to groan in pain. Her lips and teeth were filled with his mellow scent, and there seemed to be a strong smell of smoke. His hot lips and tongue stole her breath and entered the gap between her lips. He gently nibbled on her small tongue and greedily sucked on it. She dodged uneasily and looked at the slightly darkened eyes. She raised her head and looked at the jumping floor numbers. She angrily pushed him away. This man. How dare he mess around in the elevator? They were about to reach the first floor. What if someone saw them? As he thought of this, his hand had unknowingly circled around her back, brushing past the scorching heat of his body as it probed into her skirt. Yun Shishir was so shocked that her beautiful face turned pale. She couldn't help but start to struggle. Her hands patted his shoulders, but she still couldn't stop his aggressive actions. She steeled her heart and fiercely bit his tongue. Amidst the dull pain, the 2 lips parted. Yun Shishir wiped her lips and glared at him. Muyaja, don't go too far. When he hugged you just now, the tender look on his face made her heart throb a little, and her impression of him changed. Who would have thought that at this moment, he would reveal his true colors? Muyaja's face froze for a second. Then, he raised his eyebrows dangerously and a trace of coldness appeared in his eyes. This woman actually bit him again. It was somewhat inconceivable, but more than that, he found it interesting. The girl in front of him, who clearly looked weak and fragile, was resisting him again and again. It seemed that no matter how docile a cat was, once it started to scratch, it would be quite fierce. One had to know that with his status and identity, many women would flock to him like a flock of ducks. They would even lower themselves to cater to him. However, this woman was extremely unwilling, and it ignited his desire to conquer her. Well, it was good that he spent more effort to train her. What he really enjoyed was the process of conquering. Chapter 285. The man's eyes were too scary. She simply lowered her head and stopped looking at him. In this suffocating panic, the elevator door slowly opened with a ding sound. Yun Shishir lifted her head as if she had been granted amnesty, but when she saw the woman standing outside the elevator, her heart plummeted. Her breath caught in her throat as she subconsciously pushed the man away and awkwardly tugged at the corner of her lips. Auntie, Yun Shishir was a little embarrassed. Her heart was in a mess. She didn't know how much she had seen in the elevator just now. She nervously intertwined her fingers and walked out of the elevator uneasily. She subconsciously looked at Muyaja. Unexpectedly, the man evilly wiped his lips and looked at her deeply. He whispered in her ear, "I'll wait for you outside." Then, he turned around and took out his phone to see the missed calls displayed on the screen. He then walked away. Yun Shishir was stunned. This man actually left just like that, leaving a mess for her to deal with. Yun Shishir was hesitating about what excuse to make up when she saw Yunlingru looking at Muyaja in surprise. Yunlingru said in surprise, "Shishir, what were you doing just now?" Of course, she didn't see wrong. The moment the elevator door opened, her niece, who had always been well-behaved, was intimately close to that man. Boyfriend. That man just now was obviously a business elite who had stepped into society. She suddenly felt a little strange in her heart and secretly wondered what kind of ambiguous relationship they were having. Yun Shishir was stunned. For a moment, she didn't know how to explain. Her face flushed red and her head hung low. Yunlingru saw her guilty look and became even more suspicious. "Shishir, don't tell me you're dating someone." "No." Yun Shishir denied it immediately. Yunlingru pressed on, "Then who is that man? What were you doing in the elevator just now?" I. Yun Shishir bit her lip and stuttered as she tried to explain. However, she couldn't tell the truth. Pursing her lips, she said, He's my university professor." University professor. A professor hugging his student in an elevator. Yunlingru was even more confused. She stared straight at her. There was no doubt that the child in front of her was lying. Yun Shishir had been obedient since she was a child, so she wasn't good at lying. Yunlingru could tell that she was lying from her flustered eyes. Shishir. I didn't expect you to learn how to lie after entering society. English teacher. You can lie to your father, but you can lie to me. Is he really your university professor? Don't lie to me. Faced with Yunlingru's aggression, Yun Shishir could not back down. She gritted her teeth and insisted, He is my university professor. He came to the hospital to visit Yu today. Are you still not going to tell me the truth? Yunlingru's voice was very deep. She seemed to be angry. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked coldly, I heard from your father that you haven't been home for a few days. Where have you been these few days? She paused and asked suspiciously, Did you fool around with that man? Sure, tell me, did you learn something bad and do something shameful? Chapter 286. Auntie, I have something to do now, so I'll leave first. I'll explain it to you next time. With that, she turned around and fled in a panic. Yunlingru narrowed her eyes and frowned, her gaze sharp. This girl's words sounded suspicious no matter how she listened to them. However, she wasn't her child, so even if she did something out of line, she wouldn't mind. As long as she didn't bring shame to her family, it would be fine. She couldn't afford to lose face. With that thought, she stepped into the lift. Even after running out of the hospital, Yun Shishir's heart still palpitated with fear. It was all because of this vile man who fooled around in the lift. Now that her auntie had seen it, she really didn't know how to smooth things over. A business car was parked by the roadside. The man sat in the car and seemed to have been waiting for a long time. He had already ordered his assistant to drive the sports car back. Yun Shishir walked over gloomily. The chauffeur opened the car door for her, but she didn't get into the car. Muyaja sat elegantly in the back seat with his legs crossed lazily. His eyes were looking straight ahead and he didn't turn to look at her. His perfect and unruly side profile looked reserved and cold. His eyes were half-opened lazily, and his lips were cold. Many times, he was like an arrogant emperor, exuding an aura that made people subconsciously submit to him. Yun Shishir was a little angry with him. How could this man do as he pleased? Did he not care about the occasion when he was in heat? Sperm rushing to the brain. With that thought, she couldn't help but blurt out what was in her mind. Just as she finished speaking, she reacted and bit her lip. She actually said it out loud. Muyaja glanced at her and his lips curled up playfully. What did you say? What did she say? She said that he was a sperm rushing to the brain. But she didn't dare to say it a second time. She sighed, bit her lip, and got into the carriage. Bang! The car door was shut tight. Yun Shishir looked straight ahead and didn't dare to get too close to him. She leaned against the car door and looked at him carefully out of the corner of her eye. After a long silence, she suddenly said softly, "Please send me home. I'll get some clothes for you." As soon as her voice fell, her arm was forcefully pulled by the man. Muyaja's long arm scooped her up and easily pulled her into his embrace. Yun Shishir was startled. She struggled for a moment, and in the blink of an eye, she was already pulled into his embrace. In the spacious carriage, soft music drifted in the air. The man's eyes revealed a playful smile. He lifted his thin lips and said in a low and seductive voice, "Little thing, you haven't answered me. What did you just say?" In other words, there was no way for her to change the topic and dodge the question. Yun Shishir closed her eyes and ignored her. Muyaja had plenty of ways to make her talk. Did you just say that he was overwhelmed by lust? Through her shirt, he pinched the softness in front of her chest. Like this. Yun Shishir's body trembled slightly and her face instantly tensed up. Instinctively, she turned her head to look at the chauffeur, only to see that he had consciously turned away from the rearview mirror, as though he had turned a deaf ear to the scene in the back seat. A sense of foreboding arose in her heart. Yun Shishir struggled uneasily, but the man held her waist tightly. His large palm pressed against her back and pressed her even closer to his chest. Their faces were intimately close, the tips of their noses touching, and their lips touching. Chapter 287. Such a close distance really made her feel uncomfortable. Looking at the devilishly handsome face so close, Yun Shishir helplessly pushed against his chest. Wasn't this man just sitting there quietly? Why did he suddenly? There was someone else in the car. She looked away helplessly, but her chin was tightly gripped by his long fingers and she was forced to look at his face. She was forced to look at his face. Her eyes were narrowed in pain and they were faintly moist. Her soft red lips were sparkling and translucent, just like a delicious cherry. He fiercely captured her lips and sucked on them. That soft and sweet feeling was even better than what he had imagined. Once he kissed her, he couldn't stop. His body heated up, and he greedily wanted more. He gently traced her cherry lips, and his right hand reached under her clothes, reaching for the beautiful area. He was in high spirits, and he continued what he was doing in the lift. That's enough. Muyaja. Not enough. Yun Shirshir flew into a rage out of humiliation. She struggled, and her body couldn't help but tremble. Her fair cheeks flushed red shyly, and she looked even more alluring. Muyaja looked at this pleasing scene. He had really misjudged this girl, and he had once compared her to a cat. Now that he thought about it, she was actually a beautiful and flirtatious poppy flower. One couldn't help but sink deeper and deeper, and become addicted to it. Yun Shirshir was quite shocked by this sudden action. They were still in the car, and the chauffeur was still sitting in front. This man actually did such a thing in front of others. She was a little helpless, but more than that, she felt ashamed. She pushed his chest hard, but her weak strength was not worth mentioning to Muyaja. He only used one hand to bind her wrists. Let go. Let go of me. She panted softly, and glared at him in annoyance. The man was unmoved. He pressed his lips tightly against hers, and he raised his eyebrows. Isn't this what you want from me? Yun Shirshir sneered and glanced at him. What are you talking about? It's so weird. Muyaja's eyes flashed with ridicule. You're tempting me. Don't you want me to do this? His tone was devilish. The orchid's breath curled around her neck. He had always been a man who did things his own way. He never liked to restrict himself or suppress himself. However, he didn't really want to do her. With his strong possessiveness, how could he allow his woman to be coveted by other men? However, he felt that this woman's angry look was a little cute and charming. He liked to admire her posture. It was pleasing to the eye. Therefore, he had the intention to tease her. However, Yun Shirshir really thought that this man was going to do her in the car. Yun Shirshir glanced at the chauffeur behind her from the corner of her eye. This man is too pretentious. Seeing that his actions were becoming more and more insatiable, and that his large palm was actually reaching into her clothes, she flew into a rage out of humiliation. Gritting her teeth, she raised her hand. Slap! A crisp sound rang out. The man couldn't help but turn his face sideways. She pushed him away and sat back in her seat. Her face was full of anger. Muyaja's gaze froze, and he was in disbelief. Even the driver, who was sitting in the driver's seat, was stunned. He held his breath. He had seen a lot of stubborn women, but this was the first woman who dared to hit the CEO. So powerful, the driver was in awe of her. Yun Shirshir's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. She said unhappily, I asked you to stop. Didn't you hear me clearly? Chapter 288. Yun Shirshir was not the least bit intimidated by his deterrence. She met his gaze and coldly said, Chairman Mu, I'll have to trouble you to size up the situation. Unless you're a beast, even if you're in heat, you should pick a place, okay? You may not be embarrassed, but I am. Pfft. This woman actually compared the president to a beast in heat. Actually, it was no wonder. After all, the president had been suppressing himself for a long time. He did not have a woman by his side, and his so-called fiancée was just a facade. He had been suppressing himself for a long time. The chauffeur could not help but laugh. However, when he caught a glimpse of the man's dangerous gaze through the rear-view mirror, he was so frightened that he immediately shut up. Muyaja raised his eyebrows, and there was a murderous look in his eyes. Did you say I'm a beast? I said, is there something wrong with your understanding? Yun Shirshir asked mockingly. Did I say you're a beast? What I said just now was that only beasts choose a time and place to be in heat. I wasn't referring to you in particular. Mu Yaja was taken aback by her words. Yun Shishir's words were impeccable, and he was speechless. This woman was really sharp-tongued. She did not say anything on the surface, but she insinuated that he was a beast. Even if he wanted to refute, there was nothing he could do. Chairman Mu, you're from a noble family. You must have received higher education. Don't you know the basic respect for others? Yun Shishir said angrily. If you don't know, why don't I teach you another lesson? The man raised his eyebrows unhappily. Are you educating me? The chauffeur could not help but laugh when he heard that. Mu Yaja could not take it anymore. He had nowhere to vent his anger after being snubbed by someone. Old Han. Yes, President. Why are you laughing? Which bastard is laughing? Old Han looked embarrassed. Am I laughing? I'm not laughing. Just now, you. Mu Yaja's voice was serene with hidden displeasure. President, I was in a daze just now. I didn't see or hear anything. Old Han was a smart man and immediately defended himself. Get lost. Mu Yaja said coldly. Old Han wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly turned off the engine. At the same time, he raised the partition in the car to separate the driver's seat from the back seat. The car was closed, and the back seat was an enclosed space, isolated from the rest of the world. What are you doing? Yun Shishir watched as the chauffeur alighted from the car. From the corner of her eye, she could see the man's gloomy and terrifying expression. She pursed her lips, and felt a little scared. Just now, she couldn't help but stretch out her hand and slap him. Now, she was filled with regret. It seemed that she had angered him. She turned to open the car door, but the car was already locked. Without the central control to unlock it, the car door could not be opened. Behind her, Mu Yaja pulled her into his embrace with his long arms and asked coldly, "Are you satisfied now?" Now, we are the only ones in the car. There are no outsiders. Yun Shishir's heart skipped a beat. She said angrily, "Are you a beast?" You're right. I'm a beast. Mu Yaja inched closer to her and sniffed the shower gel on her neck. It was the same scent as his. He felt as if he was poisoned. He was poisoned by this woman, and there was no antidote. It was not enough. It was not enough. He had never desired a woman so much. It was like he was poisoned. No one could cure him. Seeing the man getting closer, Yun Shishir's body tensed up. She pushed his chest and said angrily, "No, I don't like it in the car." Chapter 289. Enough. Before she could finish her sentence, her phone started ringing again as if it was her last resort. Mu Yaja frowned unhappily and picked up the phone. Yun Shishir glanced at it curiously. The name Mu Wanru was like a needle pricking her eyes. Her heart felt strangely congested. Mu Wanru was this man's fiancé. Just as she was feeling embarrassed and annoyed, she suddenly realized what was going on. Could it be that they didn't have a good relationship? She had never seen a couple in love leave a full name and their contact information on their phones. It was cold and indifferent. There wasn't even a pet name. Those 3 words were cold and emotionless, as if there was no emotion behind them. On second thought, she raised her eyebrows. Simple and clear. That was this man's usual style. Maybe they had a good relationship. Why should she worry about it? But as he thought of this, a sense of shame arose in his heart. She felt that she was a third party. Yun Shishir suddenly felt very uncomfortable. She wanted to defend herself, but she couldn't. Wasn't that right? What was the difference between her and those women who interfered in other people's marriages? Mu Wanru, Was she the woman she bumped into the other time? Yun Shusher's gaze deepened. She felt that something was wrong. She didn't know why, but this woman gave her a sense of déjà vu. Her eyes were so familiar. In her dusty memory, it was as if an indelible mark had been engraved. Somehow, it was as if some memory was breaking out of its cocoon. Her head hurt. Mu Yaja hung up the phone and didn't pick it up. From the corner of his eye, he saw that she was deep in thought. His handsome eyes deepened. Rose Manor. In front of the bright floor-to-ceiling windows, Mu Wanru was in her pajamas. She held her phone tightly. Her expression was distorted due to anger. He wasn't picking up the phone. 3 consecutive calls were cut off. What was going on? She turned around and walked to the dining table. There was a thick stack of newspapers on the table. The headlines of the newspapers were all about Tang Yu having an affair with Huan Yu's top management. The pictures and text were very eye-catching. Mu Wanru picked up one of them and skimmed through it. Looking at the dazzling title, her knuckles stiffened. Alan, you useless piece of trash. He didn't do his job well and even messed up a small task that was given to him. She trusted him so much, but he couldn't even do such a simple thing. She had thought that she could sit back and wait for Yun Shusher's scandal to be exposed, but now she had fallen into an irrecoverable situation. At that time, even Huan Yu would not be able to protect her, let alone Lin Fengtian. For a female celebrity, it was a huge scandal to be exposed. She would definitely be banned from the industry. Who knew that the person who was exposed the next day would be Tang Yu? This was strange. Why Tang Yu? Alan assured her again and again that the whole thing had been arranged properly. His subordinates had personally sent Yun Shusher to the car. How did things turn out like this in the end? Could it be that Yun Shusher could turn into a living person? This was simply a fantasy. Mu Wanru was angry and frustrated. At the same time, she found it inconceivable. She had an ominous premonition that there was something fishy going on. The servant served breakfast to the table one after another. Mu Xing slowly walked down the stairs with the help of the nanny. Mu Wanru immediately crushed the newspapers and threw them into the trash can. She went up to him with a smile and took the old man from the nanny. Carefully supporting him, she said sweetly, "Grandpa, good morning." Chapter 290. Mu Wanru helped him to sit at the table. Grandpa Mu sat up straight, lifted his chin, and scanned the dining room. Suddenly, he asked, "That lad didn't come home last night?" At the mention of this, Mu Wanru looked worried. She said helplessly, "Yes, he didn't come back. I don't know where he went. Maybe he's busy at the office." "The office works at night." Grandpa Mu sneered, expressing his displeasure. "I think that lad's wings have hardened and his heart has become wild. He doesn't even know how to return home. Wanru, you should discipline him." "Grandpa, how can I discipline him?" Mu Wanru pouted and acted coquettishly. She sat down on the chair beside Mu Xing and said sadly, "Grandpa, he doesn't listen to my advice at all. Ever since he was young, he didn't listen to anyone other than you. I asked him to come home earlier, but he didn't come back last night. This isn't the first time. He wasn't like this in the past, though." Mu Xing nodded in agreement. This child had always been cold and indifferent. He would never get into trouble outside. He was different from other playboys who liked to flirt with countless women. This child would never mess around. This was something he had always acknowledged. In Grandpa Mu's heart, Mu Yaja was a responsible father. He would come home every night to have dinner with Xiao Yichen. No matter how busy he was with work, he would never miss it. However, his abnormality these few days made Grandpa Mu especially concerned. Seeing his slightly darkened expression, Mu Wanru continued to whisper in his ear, "Grandpa, he's a man. Do you think he has other women outside? He dares." Grandpa Moo was so angry when he heard this that he blew his beard and glared at her. He slammed his palm on the table, causing some of the tea to splash out. The servants behind him were so shocked that they did not dare to breathe loudly. Mu Wanru was elated to see this. Mu Xing had always been on her side. This time, he must stand up for her. Lass, don't worry. If he's unfaithful to you and messes around outside, Grandpa will definitely stand up for you and break his legs. Grandpa Mu looked at her lovingly. When he got angry, the cane in his hand hit the ground heavily. Mu Wanru pursed her lips and looked at him pitifully. Grandpa. Don't be sad, I won't let him down. With that, he patted the back of her hand affectionately. Don't worry. Seeing that Grandpa Mu was going to stand up for her, she was even happier. So, she pretended to be distressed and said, Grandpa, don't do that. If you break his leg, my heart will ache, and so will Grandpa. Humph. You spoil him the most. If you don't take care of a man and set some rules for him, his heart will be wild sooner or later. Mu Xing was quite knowledgeable about this. When he was young, Grandpa Mu was also a playboy. He had married 3 wives, and he had attracted a lot of love affairs. Mu Wanru faintly said, Grandpa, do you still remember the girl who was my surrogate 6 years ago? Yes. Mu Xing's eyes darkened. That girl was chosen by him. She was very delicate and pretty, with outstanding features and an aura of purity. What was more commendable was that her eyes were very similar to that woman's. Too similar. It was as if she was a carbon copy. Hence, Mu Xing took a liking to her at first glance. Mu Wanru continued, I think that woman's background is not simple. Chapter 291. Grandpa Mu's eyebrows twitched and he quickly asked, What do you mean? This woman is quite ambitious and scheming. I don't know how she managed to sneak into Huan Yu's cocktail party. Not only did she deliberately show off in front of Zhe, but she also tried to find opportunities to get close to Xiao Yichen. What do you think? Is she trying to use her son to climb up the social ladder? Mu Wanru's eyes were filled with sadness as she spoke. Xiao Yichen has never been close to me since we were young. I'm worried that she's plotting something to drive a wedge between me and my son. Grandpa, please be reasonable. Don't you think she's too much? Mu Wanru recalled the intimate scene between Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja on the dance floor on the day of the cocktail party. She felt a stab of pain in her heart. An actress? Grandpa Mu snorted coldly. He was a rather old-fashioned person. He had never liked the people in the entertainment industry, especially those female celebrities. He always felt that they were scheming and came from unknown backgrounds. None of them were good people. Among the rich and powerful, the celebrities in the entertainment industry were the ones who were looked down upon the most. Although the celebrities were very popular nowadays, in the eyes of the older generation of aristocrats, they were just mediocre actresses. Since ancient times, there was a saying that a prostitute was heartless and an actor was heartless. Therefore, it was not a prejudice. It was just that the rich and powerful looked down on the people in the entertainment industry. Mu Wanru gritted her teeth and nodded. Yes. I don't know how she managed to sneak into the entertainment industry. Do you think she did it on purpose? Humph. If that brat dares to bring an actress with an unknown background into the Mu family, he can try. Grandpa Mu was so angry that his lips were trembling. He knocked on his walking stick and scolded, I can't stand those lowly actresses. Moreover, the contract clearly states that she can't cause any trouble for the child's custody. Otherwise, she'll have to bear the consequences. If she insists, she'll burn herself. Mu Wanru was secretly happy when she heard that. However, she pretended to be helpless and said, but what if she protects her? Grandpa, do you know that some women are born to be seductive? They are born to seduce men. How dare he? Why wouldn't he dare? Mu Wanru pouted and said, he hasn't been home for the past 2 days. He must be with that woman. Grandpa, you have to help me. What? Mu Xing's eyes widened in fury. I'll teach him a good lesson when he comes back. Don't be sad. Grandfather will uphold justice for you. Yes. Mu Wanru nodded happily. Although Grandpa Mu was already in his 60s, he was still a man who had been involved in bloody battles when he was young. His methods were ruthless. If she were to borrow his means to get rid of Yun Shishir, this thorn in her side, she wouldn't need to do anything. Old Master Mu was obviously still angry. He lifted his chin and looked around before asking with a strange expression, "Where's Yichen?" Mu Wanru immediately asked the nanny behind her, "Where's the young master?" "Young master is doing his morning exercise at the archery range. Go call him over for breakfast." "Yes." Mu Wanru sat down and carefully reached out to caress the old man's chest. She coquettishly said, "Grandpa, don't be angry." "Why are you angry over such a slut?" Chapter 292. The villa was located in the southwest corner of the mansion. It was a huge indoor shooting range. Mu Yaja had always been willing to invest a lot of effort into Xiao Yichen. When Xiao Yichen had just learned how to walk, Mu Yaja had sent him to the special training camp to observe the soldiers' special training. When he was young, Grandpa Mu had also trained him in the same way. Every summer, he would send him to the special training camp to undergo special training. Under Mu Yaja's influence, Xiao Yichen had developed a strong interest in firearms and combat at a young age. When he was 2 years old and the other children were still learning how to speak, Xiao Yichen was already holding a pacifier in his mouth. He could skillfully assemble and load all kinds of firearms and ammunition. When he was 3 years old, he could even load and shoot skillfully. Even Grandpa Mu could not help but click his tongue in amazement. Children of the same age as Xiao Yichen might still be learning how to speak. Those who were talented liked to draw on white paper and were still obsessed with interesting toys. However, Xiao Yichen seemed to have inherited Mu Yaja's iron-blooded genes. He did not like to play with words and ink. Instead, he was obsessed with combat and firearms. When he was 5 years old, he officially entered the military camp. Not only did he not complain about the heavy training, but he was also very excited about it. Grandpa Mu was in awe. Not only was this child not inferior to Mu Yaja when he was young, but he had even surpassed him in terms of maturity. The villa was not only equipped with a fencing hall, but it was also equipped with an archery hall, a shooting range, and a combat arena. All of these were prepared for Xiao Yichen. At the same time, in the archery hall, it was quiet. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop on the ground. Xiao Yichen was wearing a smart and neat protective suit. He stood upright and held a heavy bow in his hand. He held his breath and focused on aiming at the target 100 meters away. His fingers pulled the bowstring. Swoosh! The arrow that was released from the bowstring seemed to have the power of a thunderbolt. It was like an arrow made of sparks. It was shot in an instant and accurately hit the bullseye. Young master, behind him, the nanny who had rushed over had been waiting for a long time. Seeing him put down the bow, she said softly, "Master and young madam want you to have breakfast." Xiao Yichen acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He turned around with a cold expression and took off his equipment expressionlessly. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned around to ask, "Did Daddy come back last night?" Young master didn't come back last night." "Oh." Xiao Yichen furrowed his brows slightly, and there was a hint of loneliness in his eyes. After a moment of silence, he picked up the towel handed to him by a servant and wiped the sweat off his face. "I'm not going. Tell Grandpa and Mommy that I have no appetite." His cold words revealed that he was somewhat disappointed at the moment. The nanny said with a worried face, "Young master, if you don't go eat breakfast, master will be worried. Skipping breakfast isn't good for your health. Then prepare a copy for me and send it to my study, Xiao Yichen said coldly and walked out of the archery range. Behind him, the nanny looked at his cold figure and sighed softly. The father and son were exactly the same in terms of temperament. Chapter 293. When she opened the door, the apartment was cold and empty. Mu Yaja followed behind her. The moment he stepped into the extremely small space, a look of disdain appeared on his face out of displeasure. This apartment was too small. To Yun Shishir and Yu Yu, this apartment was extremely spacious. Compared to the second-hand apartment that Papa Yun had bought previously, this apartment had 2 bedrooms, 1 living room, 1 bedroom, 1 study, and a 10-square-meter living room. It could be said that this apartment was very comfortable for them to live in. However, to Mu Yaja, who was nearly 1.9 meters tall, this place seemed especially cramped. Standing in such a small space with his hands and feet tied, he felt extremely restrained. Yun Shishir rushed into the room and hurriedly prepared a change of clothes for Yu Yu. The material of the hospital gown was coarse, and the child's skin was soft and sensitive. Sleeping in the hospital gown was really unsettling. Although Yu Yu did not mention it, Yun Shishir was attentive. With one glance, she saw the red rash on his wrist due to his sensitive body. Her heart ached terribly. Although the clothes that she bought for Yu Yu were not expensive, she had specially selected the best quality. Yu Yu had a weak body, so she was very careful about everything, no matter how big or small. During this time, Mu Yaja had some free time, so he curiously took a look around the small apartment. After entering, there was a bathroom that was as small as a fish tank on the left. Mu Yaja frowned as he walked in. His head almost bumped into the door frame. It was too small. The space of 7 to 8 square meters was stuffed with an old automatic washing machine, a toilet bowl, and a sink. When he walked in, he accidentally bumped his knee into the washing machine. The man frowned slightly. He was extremely displeased and was even more disgusted. The bathroom was described as smaller than a fish tank because there was a wall-mounted aquarium outside the living room of the Mu residence. Just the aquarium alone was 5 to 6 meters long, so it was indeed much bigger than this bathroom. A human is inferior to a fish. Mu Yaja walked into the kitchen again. The first thing he saw was 2 little bare aprons hanging on the barbs. One big and one small, it looked very warm. There was a duty list on the door. He glanced at it. There were 7 days in a week. Yu Yu was responsible for 5 days of meals, and Yun Shishir was responsible for 3 meals on weekends. The man smiled and could not help but find it interesting. It turned out that this Xiao Bao knew how to cook. A 6-year-old child actually knows how to do housework. I wonder how good her skills are. In the south, there were 2 rooms side by side. One of them was a study. Mu Yaja was a little taken aback when he walked in. There was a fax machine, a printer, a mahogany desk, a high-end computer, and a locked safe on the desk. Other than that, there was a pencil case and a thick stack of blueprints. Everything was neatly organized. What he did not know was that everything in the study was arranged by Yun Shishir according to Yun Tianyo's blueprints. It looked like a small office. Usually, Yu Yu was the only one taking care of it, and Yun Shishir never interfered. Mu Yaja glanced at the blueprints on the table and picked them up curiously. He could not help being stunned when he glanced at them. This thick stack of blueprints was actually a toy blueprint. The drawing was exquisite and meticulous. Be it the design or concept, it was ingenious. Such a design draft was clearly from an excellent and professional designer. Chapter 294. Mu Yaja. The man raised his head. At the door of the study, Yun Shishir was carrying a pile of heavy laundry. Seeing the design drawings in his hands, she warned him sternly, "Don't touch anything in this study, or else you will be angry." This study was Yu Yu's little world. Usually, Yun Shishir would come in to clean it, but she would not touch anything in the study. Mu Yaja put down the drawings and walked out of the study. Looking from the corner of his eye, he strode into the bedroom as if he had discovered a new continent. Yun Shishir, who was standing at the side, had cold lines on her forehead. This was akin to a wealthy aristocrat visiting a slum. She did not think much of it, though. Carrying the clothes into the bathroom, she planned to wash them while she was here. Mu Yaja then took a tour of the bedroom. At the entrance, there was a double bed. The light blue bedding and sheets gave off a sense of childlike innocence and warmth. Yu Yu liked the color blue, but she also liked simplicity. Hence, there were not many patterns on the sheets, it was very simple. The bedside table was filled with all kinds of books. He casually picked up a few. There were novels, fables, comic books, and fairy tales. It was as if he had finally found a trace of a child's innocence here. He slowly sat down on the edge of the bed. The scene of Yun Tianyu leaning against the headboard and lazily flipping through the comic books surfaced in his mind. These books were recommended to parents by the school. Yun Shishir specially bought a few sets from the bookstore and placed them on the bedside table. Every night before bed, she would hug Yun Tianyu and gently tell him the stories from the comic books. Usually, Yun Tianyu was uninterested in these children's comics and books. He always found them boring, but he liked listening to his mommy tell him stories. Yun Shishir's voice was very gentle. It was soft and sweet, just like a Jiangnan woman's. Listening to her sweet voice in his dreams was the happiest thing in Yun Tianyu's heart. In the narrow space, there was a strong atmosphere of life, as well as a tranquil little warmth. Although the room was a little small and the double bed was not spacious enough, Mu Yaja lay down with his arms as a pillow. He could not even stretch his limbs freely. However, on the blanket, there was the unique milky fragrance of a child, as well as the unique fresh body fragrance of Yun Shishir. This fragrance was tranquil and gentle. It wasn't overbearing, but it was refreshing. Mu Yaja felt a moment of peace in his heart. When Yun Shishir walked into the bedroom again, the man was lying on the bed, deeply asleep. She couldn't help but smile. She still remembered that a certain man had said that she had more energy than others. Yun Shishir quietly walked to the bedside, squatted down, and looked at the man's exquisite sleeping face closely. The man in deep sleep had his eyes gently closed. The dim light engraved a thin layer of shadow on his angular facial features. His long, narrow eyes and thick, black eyelashes were beautiful and charming. Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows in surprise. She remembered that when Yu Yu was born, he had a head of thick, black hair. When his eyes were closed, his eyelashes were fine and dense, even thicker than hers. It turned out that he had inherited this man's genes. He had a high nose bridge and a beautiful curve. He was like a sculpture that had been carved with the finest craftsmanship. Chapter 295. Yun Shishir looked at every inch of his face and suddenly admitted that this man was very good-looking. Sometimes, it had to be said that the heavens were biased. They gave him all the best things in the world and were not stingy at all. His monstrous interpretation, his wealth that could rival a country, his inexhaustible wealth, and even gave him a heaven-shocking appearance. He was incomparably handsome and perfect. But it gave him a strange temperament. His mood was unpredictable and his personality was very bad. Perhaps it was the style of the children of aristocratic families, always putting themselves first. If he liked it, he had to get it. If he couldn't get it, he would destroy it and not give it to others. If he didn't like it, he didn't want it. He would never force himself for anyone and was insufferably arrogant. But he had this kind of capital. While she was lost in thought, the man on the bed suddenly opened his eyes and looked into her eyes. Yun Shishir was caught off guard and was stunned. In the next second, an arm powerfully wrapped around her waist and pulled her into his embrace. The world in front of her eyes turned upside down, and in an instant, she was pressed down by the man's body. The double bed was not big and it was hard for it to fit the man's tall body, but the texture was very soft. The bed was slightly sunken and her body sank in. Muyaja's heavy body fell on top of her and it was hard for her to breathe. Yun Shishir's cheeks turned red because of his heavy body. "Hey, Muyaja, what are you doing?" Muyaja lowered his head and sniffed the gentle fragrance in her hair. His deep voice sounded like orchids in her ears. "Sleeping with my woman." "What?" She thought she had heard wrong. The man kindly reminded her, "I said, sleeping with you." Yun Shishir was a bit defeated by him and angrily said, "Are you a stud horse? Can't you think of something else other than this? If I'm a stud horse, are you being planted?" She simply gave up struggling. How could she forget that this man had always been overbearing and aloof? He never cared about other people's feelings. She didn't struggle anymore, nor did she push him. She simply spread out her body and let him do whatever he wanted. She closed her eyes expressionlessly and did not resist at all. She was as quiet as a dead fish. However, the stalemate continued, and neither of them made a move. However, the man on top of her just quietly imprisoned her and didn't make the next move for a long time. She had some doubts in her heart. She opened her eyes slightly and saw Muyaja looking down at her. His gaze was scrutinizing and sizing her up. Suddenly, he said coldly, "Yun Shishir, aren't you a little too tactless?" "What do you mean?" "The line of women waiting for me to pamper them stretches from here to Milan. Yet you're avoiding me like the plague." Muyaja looked at her coldly. He had seen too many tricks of loosening the reins only to grasp them better. There were always some women who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth acting in front of him. Therefore, he could tell at a glance that this woman's resistance and disobedience towards him was not some pretentious trick. Instead, he was really trying to avoid him. Arrogance. It was as if she should treat his favor as a great gift and kowtow to thank him sincerely. Yun Shishir sneered. "They're blind, but I'm not blind." "Are they blind?" Muyaja turned slightly and supported his body with his arm. He stared at her calmly and asked, "How are they blind?" Yun Shishir was speechless. Chapter 296. There are so many women in the world. Why do you have to be entangled with me? It's none of your business. Muyaja lifted her chin and his handsome face slowly approached her. His slightly cold lips were printed on the corner of her lips, and his warm breath invaded her lips. Gradually, his breathing was no longer calm and became a little rapid. His sexy thin lips gently wandered around her neck, embellishing it with light kisses, and he craved for more. At this moment, he was like a lost and thirsty traveler in the desert, and she was like a clear and pure spiritual spring. He repeatedly tasted it, but he still couldn't quench his thirst. His thin lips kissed all the way up her beautiful neck. His arms wrapped around her slim waist and pushed her back, forcing her body to be close to his chest. Through the thin material of her clothes, he seemed to be able to feel the warmth from her skin. It was tender, warm, and beautiful. Muyaja's right hand held the back of her neck, forcing her to meet his lips. His warm breath covered her lips, and in an instant, she was completely engulfed. No longer satisfied with such a light kiss, the man arrogantly attacked again, all the way to the city. However, his attack was limited to kisses, and didn't go as deep as the previous few times. The temperature in the room suddenly rose. Ambiguity, charm, and sweetness swept through. She endured it, but she was silent. Muyaja couldn't accept her lack of reaction. The tip of his tongue pried open her lips, either passionately or seductively teasing her, trying to get her to respond. However, from the beginning to the end, Yun Shishir only closed her eyes, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. If he wanted it, she would give it to him. It wasn't too complicated. Even if she struggled, it was useless. Instead, it aroused the man's strong desire to conquer. If she opened her body and let him do whatever he wanted, he would definitely feel indifferent and even lose interest in her. At that time, wouldn't she be free? Get rid of this man and return to her own life. As expected, she didn't respond. Muyaja only felt that it was dull, and the kiss came to an abrupt end. Looking up, the man looked at her stubborn and arrogant face and frowned slightly in displeasure. It was very boring. He would rather she struggle and resist. That way, at least he would feel the pleasure of conquering. However, she opened her body and let him do whatever he wanted, and he lost interest. He lowered his head in dissatisfaction and bit her earlobe as a punishment. A sharp pain pierced through her earlobe. She clenched her teeth tightly and did not make a sound. Even if it hurt, there was no response. "Do you think you're a dead fish?" She didn't know how to respond. Or did she feel that it was too difficult to be with him? "Since you want it, I'll give it to you. I'll be obedient." "Don't you want me to be obedient?" Yun Shirsha retorted sarcastically with a hint of disgust in her eyes. Of his arrogance and his forcefulness. Very of his words. Wasn't hers his. Muyaja lowered his head abruptly. His thin lips brushed past her jade-like collarbones and landed on her neck. He sucked on her skin fiercely, his hot breath continuously blowing on her skin. Chapter 297. The woman in the mirror had flushed cheeks and gloomy eyes. On her exposed neck, there was a red, swollen, and ambiguous kiss mark. She was shocked to see it. The glaring mark was like a man's insignia on her body. It was an eyesore. Yun Shirsha was furious. She rubbed her fingertips hard, but the mark only became more red and swollen, making it even more obvious. It was already midsummer, yet he left such an obvious mark on her neck. He was clearly trying to embarrass her. How could this man be so vile? She turned around and gritted her teeth. "Muyaja, you're too much. This is punishment." "Punishment?" Yun Shirsha widened her eyes in disbelief. What a self-righteous man. She turned around and left the room in anger. Muyaja stared at her back view as she left in a huff. His lips curled into a triumphant smile. Yun Shirsha rushed into the kitchen and leaned against the sink. She scooped up a handful of water and splashed it on her burning cheeks as if this was the only way to cool down her burning skin quickly. She took a wet towel and wiped her cheeks and neck repeatedly. She rubbed it fiercely as if she wanted to wipe off the man's scent and marks on her body. However, after a while, she sighed in vain. Why did he have to make things difficult for himself? Was he torturing himself as well? Grumble, a long and weak sound came from her stomach. She was hungry. Biting her lower lip, she opened the fridge gloomily. There were not many ingredients left at home. There were only a few eggs, a piece of beef, and a bundle of dried noodles. Thus, she thought of making some food to fill her stomach and then rushing to the hospital to replace Yun Yecheng. Her culinary skills were not considered good. When she was in the Yun family, all the household chores were done by her. At that time, she was still studying. Although she had to work daily and was very busy, Yun Yecheng's 3 shifts were reversed. Li Qin had never cooked before, so she could not count on Yun not to do so. Thus, she had to cook all 3 meals at home. After she moved out of the Yun family and stepped into society, she was often overwhelmed with work. Fortunately, Yu was obedient and sensible. Feeling sorry for her busy work, he bought a stack of cookery books from the bookstore and developed some good culinary skills. In the end, Yu's cooking was far beyond her standards. However, her culinary skills were not bad. The beef was sliced and fried out of the wok. The noodles were placed in the wok and 2 eggs were placed on top. After a while, a large bowl of noodles was brought out of the kitchen. Muyaja smelled the aroma from far away in the bedroom. Smelling the aroma, he walked out of the room. Yun Shishir went back to the kitchen to get a pair of chopsticks and a spoon. When she came out, she saw the man sitting at the dining table leisurely, holding a bowl of noodles and tasting a mouthful of broth. It was surprisingly delicious. The man raised his eyebrows and licked away the soup stain on the corner of his lips with the tip of his tongue. Clearly, he was savoring the taste. Muyaja lowered his head and stared at the noodles in the bowl. In addition to the noodles, there were 2 poached eggs and a few slices of beef. But for some reason, the aroma was overflowing and aroused his appetite. There was no doubt that he was hungry, too. He did not feel anything at first, but when the aroma wafted into the room, his taste buds had a subtle reaction. What is this? He had never seen a noodle soup with such ingredients. The chefs hired by the Mu residents were all high-class chefs from 5-star hotels. Their culinary skills were well known. Whether it was Chinese, Western, or French cuisine, they were a piece of cake. However, no matter how delicious it was, after 20 years of repeated cooking, one would get tired of it. Chapter 298. After all, young Master Mu had been living a luxurious life since he was young, so he had never seen what was called vermicelli. Could it be that someone as rich as him had never eaten vermicelli before? That was true. This was the food of the commoners. A noble like him would never have the chance to try it. Yun Shishir was silent. She was a bit speechless. She placed the chopsticks and spoon on the table. A certain man naturally picked up the chopsticks and began to eat the vermicelli. He was actually eating with relish. Outside the window, the sunlight spilled into the windowsill. Muyaja's back was straight. Even when he was eating the vermicelli, he still had an elegant manner. He was very quiet and did not even make a single sound. She finally believed that he was a true noble. The good etiquette that he had received since he was young was clearly displayed at the dining table. Even if he was holding the most common bowl of vermicelli in his hands, he still maintained the noble and elegant aura of a noble. This kind of aura was not fake. If it wasn't for the elegant etiquette that he had received since he was young, this kind of aura would have seeped into his bones over the past 10 years. Yun Shishir helplessly pursed her lips. Seeing that her portion of vermicelli had been snatched away, she could only turn back to make another one. When she brought it out again, Muyaja had already silently finished the vermicelli in the bowl. It seemed like it was to his taste, not even a drop of broth was left. She glanced at the bowl and saw that he had really finished it all. He had eaten it very elegantly, not even a drop of broth was spilled on the table. The etiquette of a noble was really complicated. Isn't he tired? Yun Shishir silently cursed in her heart. She sat at the table and was about to eat the vermicelli when she saw Muyaja's deep gaze land on the bowl of vermicelli in her hand. This is mine. She muttered unhappily. To be precise, the portion that he had just eaten was originally hers. Seeing the hidden desire in his eyes, she quickly used her hand to protect the bowl of vermicelli. She was afraid that he would snatch it away again, so she warned him, "This bowl of vermicelli is mine." "Cook me another bowl," he demanded confidently. After finishing the bowl of noodles, he still wanted more. Yun Shishir had obviously underestimated his appetite. He was a man after all, and he hadn't eaten his fill for the entire night. Naturally, he was hungry. Her brows furrowed, and she was speechless. "If you want to eat more, go cook it yourself." Muyaja's handsome eyes fixed on her. "I won't." "No. Serves you right to starve." She was not surprised to see the man's handsome face turn gloomy as she said this. Yun Shishir was a little pleased with herself. She had been bullied by him so many times. This time, she had finally gotten back at him. Let him watch her eat to her heart's content. "You'll be starved to death." Yun Shishir cursed in her heart with satisfaction. She skillfully picked up the noodles with her chopsticks and slurped a mouthful. Slurp, slurp. She didn't eat vermicelli as elegantly as Muyaja. Even when eating, he had to maintain a noble demeanor. He didn't even make a sound when eating vermicelli. If you want to eat vermicelli, you have to slurp it. Yun Shishir was really hungry, so she was too lazy to care about her demeanor in front of him. She took a big bite and stuffed her mouth full. When eating vermicelli, it was inevitable to make a small sound. Chapter 299. Muyaja frowned a little. Although he felt that she didn't look ladylike, he didn't know why, but seeing her eating like this, coupled with the slurping sound of the noodles, he felt that the noodles were even more delicious. Yun Shishir was so engrossed in her food that she did not realize that the man sitting opposite her had quietly stood up and silently appeared beside her. He leaned over, grabbed her hand that was holding the chopsticks, and kissed her on the lips. He put the noodles that she had just eaten into his mouth. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile, clearly finding it delicious. Yun Shishir was stunned. She suddenly wiped her lips with the back of her hand and pushed the bowl of noodles in front of him. After being teased by him, she completely lost her appetite. You eat, I'm not eating anymore. Why, are you angry? Who cares about you? Go and eat your clear soup noodles. Yun Shishir glared at him speechlessly and went to the bathroom to take the washed clothes to cool. Muyaja saw her angry appearance and was in a good mood. He sat back at the table and enjoyed the noodles in the bowl with satisfaction. When Yun Shishir came back from cooling the clothes, there was no one at the table. The sound of the shower came from the shower. From time to time, the man's frustrated curses could be heard. He was sweating a little after eating the noodles. Plus, he was sweating in the hot and stuffy hospital, so he wanted to take a shower. However, there was a problem with the water heater. The water came out intermittently and it was sometimes cold and sometimes hot. This made a certain young master who had always lived a good life suffer a little. Yun Shishir's lips twitched. This man really didn't treat her as an outsider. He completely treated this place as his own home. After washing the dishes, there was a knock on the door. Yun Shishir was suspicious. She opened the door and was shocked by the solemn scene outside. In the narrow corridor, there were 2 rows of men in black suits standing straight. Each of them had a cold expression and didn't smile. The 2 men standing at the front were holding a stack of clean clothes and walked in as if there was no one around. Just then, the bathroom door opened and Muyaja walked out with a gloomy face. The water heater was hot and cold. At this moment, his face was as black as ink. The man in the suit stood behind him and handed the clothes over. Muyaja was rubbing his wet hair with a towel. His lower body was wrapped in a teddy bear bath towel, and his upper body was bare. His well-defined muscles were stained with water, making him look exceptionally sexy and charming. Yun Shishir's gaze fell on the teddy bear bath towel and she held her forehead in annoyance. This bath towel was specially used by Yu. Every time the little fellow finished bathing, he would drape this bath towel over his body. However, when it was used on a man, it was so small that it could only cover half of his body. Hey! Yun Shishir pointed at the towel on his body. This is Yu's special towel. Muyaja glanced at her unhappily. And? My son is obsessed with cleanliness. Yun Shishir mocked. Muyaja's lips twitched. He could no longer maintain his elegant bearing. Woman, you let my son live in such a shabby place. Chapter 300. Your so-called lousy place costs a few thousand a month. Young Master Mu, I'm not like you, who is so rich that you can rival a country. This place is already very decent. It's just that the water heater is broken. This man was too much. What did he mean by lousy place? Did he think that everyone was like him, with mountains of gold and silver at home? This was the capital. It was not a small city. Even if the apartment here was not in a good location, the land price was not cheap. A month's rent was already very considerable for her. Muyaja, however, asked, "Do we need to rent such a lousy place?" Yes, the man in the suit helped him change into clean and fresh clothes. Muyaja impatiently rubbed his wet hair and walked forward to pick her up. "Let's go." "Ah, where are we going?" "I can't tolerate my woman and son living in a pigsty." Pigsty. Wait, did he say that her home was a pigsty? She was about to throw a tantrum when Muyaja strode over and, without giving her a chance to protest, half-carried her to the door before kicking it open with a kick. The landlord next door heard the commotion and opened the door, only to see the corridor full of bodyguards. He couldn't help but be stunned. She looked up and saw the tall man who was carrying Yunshusher downstairs. She was shocked. She took a closer look and saw that it was Yunshusher. She immediately went forward and said, "Hey, by the way, I've been looking for you for the past 2 days. Why haven't you been home?" "Your rent this month." The apartment Yunshusher rented was a property under her name. When the building opened, she bought 2 units. One of them was intended to be her son's future wedding house. However, her son was still in high school. She felt that it was a waste to leave it empty, so she simply renovated it and rented it out. As soon as she finished speaking, Muyaja impatiently refused, "I'm not renting it." "Ha!" The landlord was stunned as he watched them leave. Chairman Mu, how about this one? It's 532 square meters, 7 rooms, 3 halls, and 5 guards. It has a private garden and a swimming pool. The villa has a total of 5 floors and has a private elevator. At the Shanti Walk sales office, a sales manager was introducing a luxurious villa to a cold-looking man sitting on the sofa. Muyaja took the brochure from his hand, glanced at it, and lowered his head to ask the woman in his arms for her opinion. "Do you like it?" Yunshusher was still in a daze. She shook her head. Seeing her shake her head, Muyaja didn't ask why she didn't like it. Instead, he directly said to the sales manager who was looking at him expectantly, "Change." "Good. Please wait a moment, Chairman Mu." The manager did not have the slightest impatience and respectfully retreated. Yunshusher raised her head and looked around. She still felt like she was in a dream. Shanti Walk was a high-end real estate developed by Dishing Financial Group this year. It catered to high-end customers. The average price of a 500 square meter villa was as high as 80 million yuan. After conversion, the average price was 160,000 yuan per square meter. It was so extravagant that it made people speechless. This real estate had villas, bungalows, and high-end apartments for high-class white-collar workers. It had a retro palace-style Mediterranean style. It was luxurious, dignified, and uniquely elegant. It was one of the most luxurious real estate in the capital. The sales manager did not recognize Muyaja at first. He only thought that he was an ordinary customer, so he did not pay much attention to him. Chapter 301. After all, he was just a sales manager. With such an ordinary status, he had no chance to meet Dishing's CEO in person. Hence, when Muyaja walked into the sales hall with Yunshusher in his arms, he treated them as ordinary customers. However, it was not until his assistant introduced them. "Manager Lee, this is our boss, the CEO of Dishing Financial Group, Mr. Mu." Only then did he feel greatly surprised. Shanti Walk was one of Dishing Financial Group's assets, but he could never have imagined that the mysterious CEO Mu was so young. Moreover, he was shockingly handsome. Who was the woman beside him? He had heard that the CEO had a fiancée. Could this be her? On second thought, the manager smiled, but he immediately understood what was going on. His attitude became even more respectful. "CEO Mu, what do you think of this? It's a large, luxurious, and well-furnished garden bungalow. It's 232 square meters and has a very quiet atmosphere. Mu Yaja pushed the brochure to Yun Shishir. Do you like it? Yun Shishir took a look at it and could not help but pick it up. It's so beautiful, this beautiful lady, do you like this set? Seeing that she was finally interested, the sales manager at the side asked with a gentle smile. I like it, but it's too big. Don't you have a smaller one? She had originally planned to move to another house. Her father had given her a bank card with a sum of money in it. However, at 200 square meters, it was a little too big. Usually, she, Yu, and her father lived together, so it was a little too spacious. The manager smiled embarrassedly. He. This is already the smallest bungalow, what about the condominium? Yun Shishir asked again. The manager wiped his sweat and helplessly said, the first phase of the condominium was sold out 5 months after it opened. The second phase is still under development, you don't like it? Yun Shishir was vexed. I like it, this garden bungalow was her favorite retro palace design. It was elegant and beautiful. It was her dream home. This one, then. Mu Yaja's slender finger pointed at the brochure. Good. Please wait for a moment, Chairman Mu. The manager put away the booklet and was about to leave. Yun Shishir was so shocked that she stopped him. Wait. Miss, do you have any other orders? The manager asked curiously. Yun Shishir said, I haven't decided yet. Consider what? Mu Yaja's face darkened. When he asked her if she liked it, didn't she say yes? Where did all these considerations come from? Yun Shishir ignored him and asked the manager, how much is this set? The manager was stunned when he heard that. Mu Yaja frowned. That's not for you to consider. How is it not something I consider? What if I can't afford it? The manager's lips twitched. This girl, wasn't she President Mu's little lover? But it didn't seem like it. Chairman Mu had never been so intimate with a woman before. If she wasn't his lover, why would he specially buy a bungalow to hide his mistress? Shimao Champagne Lake and a huge villa were all under his name. Why would he need to specially buy a bungalow? Woman, are you stupid? Mu Yaja glanced at her unhappily. I don't need you to buy it for me. I'll buy it myself. Chapter 302. Mu Yaja gazed deeply at her. Seeing how stubborn she was and how she was glaring at him, it was obvious that she was very dissatisfied with his act of giving her money. Suddenly, he smiled deeply and sank into the sofa casually. He raised his hand lazily and motioned for the manager to quote the price. Hello, this one is 45 million. Yun Shishir was petrified. Mu Yaja enjoyed her shocked expression. Seeing that she was stunned for a long time, he couldn't help but mock her. What? Didn't you say that you wanted to buy it yourself? She was speechless. She thought that a villa would cost tens of millions and a garden bungalow wouldn't be that expensive. Yun Shishir bit her lips and felt depressed. Why aren't you being stubborn anymore? Mu Yaja asked coldly. He looked up and motioned for the manager to leave immediately. The procedures to get the property certificate weren't complicated. Everything was done so quickly that it was unreasonable. Therefore, when the manager handed the new property certificate to Yun Shishir, she still couldn't come back to her senses. Mu Yaja, who was standing at the side, leaned forward slightly to admire her dumbfounded expression. His heart was filled with joy. Are you touched? You don't have to sleep in the slums anymore. Why did you give me this bungalow? Was this man going to use this to sign an unfair contract with her again? Mu Yaja saw her wary expression and couldn't help but mock her. Do you want me to watch my son sleep in a pigsty? That's not a pigsty. Yun Shishir emphasized again. Muyaja glanced at her and didn't say anything else. To him, that kind of place was no different from a pigsty. It was small and unsafe. There were dozens of residents living in that building. It might even be more than that. It was difficult to avoid miscellaneous people. In addition, the security was not in place, so anyone could come and go as they pleased. How could he allow his woman and son to live in such a foul place? However, at that moment, the woman in front of him looked stubborn and carefully protected her pitiful self-esteem in front of him. For some reason, he didn't say anything else. He said indifferently, "This is a gift." Yun Shishir's expression froze. That bowl of noodles as a gift. Yun Shishir was a little confused. What did he mean? A bowl of clear soup in exchange for a luxurious mansion. In this way, her bowl of noodles was worth tens of millions. Heavens, this was undoubtedly like winning the lottery, right? So, if I make a few more bowls of noodles for you, will you give me a few more mansions? Muyaja looked at her speechlessly. Yun Shishir looked at him provocatively. Without a doubt, if he agreed, she would make noodles for him every day. They had to eat him dry. His phone's ringtone interrupted the strange silence in a timely manner. Muyaja originally wanted to cut off the call, but when he saw the screen, his expression turned serious. He immediately walked to the side and picked up the phone, replying in a deep voice, "Grandpa." On the phone, the old master's voice was gloomy and angry, but he tried to control himself. "You finally know how to answer the phone. If I don't call you, you won't know where you are." Seeing that he was silent, the old master became even more furious. "Do you still know how to go home? Wanru called you so many times, why didn't you answer? Do you still see her as your wife and me as your grandfather?" Chapter 303. "Grandpa, I'm not married to her yet," Muyaja said solemnly. "What do you mean by that? So what if you're not married? She's your fiancée and your future wife. Are you trying to drive me to my grave?" Grandpa Mu was infuriated. He coughed violently and cursed, "You're trying to make me angry." Grandpa, on the other end, Muxing bellowed in exasperation, "Cut the crap. I'll give you 20 minutes. Come back immediately." The call was hung up. Muyaja's expression turned cold and gloomy in an instant. When Yun Tianyu woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he had been transferred to a different ward. It was even a special ward. Luxurious decorations, elegant style, and excellent equipment. A ward was actually created with a magnificent atmosphere. It had a living room, a study room, and a bathroom. His eyes swept across the room and saw Yun Yeqing lying on the bed with his clothes on. He was snoring lightly and heavily with a tired face. He had not slept for 2 days and 2 nights, he was already exhausted. "Why is it him?" Yun Tianyu frowned slightly, but he did not care too much about it and did not wake him up. He did not have much hatred for Yun Yeqing. He just felt that this man was too incompetent for causing his mother to suffer so much. In his heart, a man who caused his mother to suffer was useless. Did he need to say all sorts of excuses for not being able to protect someone? They were all excuses. If his mother chose to forgive him, he would also choose to let it go. Grumble, Yu rubbed his belly. He was a little hungry, so he got out of bed and shuffled to the living room in his slippers. Li Hanlin was sitting on the sofa. When he saw him coming out, he immediately stood up and greeted respectfully, "Director Yun, Why are you here?" Grumble, before he could finish his sentence, his stomach growled again. Li Hanlin looked at him with a smile in his eyes. "Hungry?" Yun Tianyu looked away in embarrassment, feeling that his smile was a little dazzling. "Did you bring food?" "Yes. I knew that you would be hungry when you woke up, so I brought your favorite Fuji bento." Li Hanlin said as he took out a bento and placed it on the table. Who asked me to be the special assistant of the 24 filial piety? Where's my mommy? When I came earlier, she was already gone. Nodding his head, he sat on the sofa and gracefully finished his lunch. Li Hanlin hurriedly took out a stack of board documents and passed them to him. Yu took the documents and flipped through them one by one. These documents were all proposals from the board meeting and would be submitted to him for final approval. Those who agreed would sign their names, and the rest would be dismissed. As he flipped through the documents, he coldly remarked, "These old good-for-nothings are getting more and more useless as they get older." The more he read, the more his brows furrowed. Abruptly, he threw the document in his hand into the air. The official documents were scattered all over the ground, like snowflakes drifting down. He stood up expressionlessly, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and coldly said, "Since they're so useless, why don't they just lie in their coffins? I'll kindly burn a pile of paper money for them." Li Hanlin was silent. How black-bellied, Li Hanlin silently criticized him in his heart. This was his usual style, though. Chapter 304. Yun Tianyu snorted. Humph. You're trying so hard to replace me. You should know your place first. Li Hanlin was shocked and hurriedly said, "No one in the company can replace Director Yun's position. That's for sure." Yun Tianyu turned to look at him intently. "Without me, the company is nothing but a wasteland." Li Hanlin was shocked. Although his words were calm, they hit a sharp edge and were extraordinarily bold. If someone else were to say this, they would be considered arrogant. But when it came from his mouth, it was incomparably convincing. Then, the official documents, reject them all. Understood. Li Hanlin arranged the documents and suddenly stood up. Director Yun, are you willing to meet the person outside? Who? Li Qin. He opened the door and saw Li Qin standing uneasily outside. He did not know how long she had been waiting. Her face lit up with joy when she saw the door open, but her heart plummeted at the sight of Yun Tianyu walking out with a cold face. Why are you here? Yun Tianyu glanced at her coldly, mocking her for her ridiculousness. This is my ward, why can't it be me? Li Qin was speechless for a moment, but when she realized that this was not the time to bicker with him, she hurriedly asked, Where's your mommy? I want to see her. Yun Tianyu sneered, not taking her seriously at all. Who are you? Is my mommy someone you can meet whenever you want? Li Qin's face turned red at his words and she bellowed in exasperation, You child, why are you so stubborn? How can you talk to your elders like that? *TCH like you is only fit to talk to me like that. She raised her hand in anger and swung it toward his little face. It was just like how she had insulted him in the Yun family. Yun Tianyu only raised his head to look at her coldly. Her palm swung toward him with a swift and fierce gust of wind. Her eyes did not even blink as they emitted a trace of coldness. Li Hanlin's face darkened. He quickly blocked her palm, grabbed her wrist, and pushed her to the ground. She landed on her but as if she was going to fall apart. Li Hanlin's strength was not small. In front of him, she did not have the strength to fight back at all. She was in so much pain that she cried out. Yun Tianyu casually walked up to her and looked down at her from above. His lips curled into a mocking and cold smile. Li Qin, why are you looking for my mommy? Li Qin grimaced in pain. Hearing his question, she sneered disdainfully, If there's anything, I have to discuss it with your mommy. I won't tell you. What would a child like you know? Hee hee. Yun Tianyu, you're getting more and more impudent. I'm your elder, I don't want to listen to nonsense. Yun Tianyu impatiently interrupted her. Since you want my mommy to help you, why don't you give me a reason for her to help you? Li Qin's expression changed, and a trace of bitterness appeared on her face. At least it's on account of the 20 years of mother-daughter relationship between me and her. Chapter 305. Friendship. What a mother-daughter relationship. Was it the friendship of 20 years of oppression and humiliation? Was it the friendship of being ostracized by him? He still could not forget the dark and heavy memories of his childhood. If that was the so-called affection. Yun Tianyu let out a lazy laugh. All right, on account of our friendship. You, which ward? She did not know if it was Yu's extraordinary aura or something else, but she actually answered hesitantly, 502, let's go. Yun Tianyu turned and ordered. Li Hanlin immediately followed his footsteps. He couldn't wait to see how miserable Li Qin and Yun Na were right now. Li Hanlin looked back at Li Qin with pity and mourned for her in his heart for a few seconds. Of all people to offend, she had to offend a little devil like Yun Tianyu. She would not even know how she died. It was no wonder that Li Qin had shamelessly come here. Now, she was forced into a corner and had no other way out. Yun Tianyu walked to the door of the ward and saw a group of onlookers crowding around it. He was not in a hurry to enter. Instead, he stood at the door and looked into the ward through the window. At one glance, he saw Yun Na hiding in a corner, covering her face and howling in pain. Her voice was hoarse and broken. The wound on her face was originally infected and suppurated. Now that someone had pulled it, the bandages on her face were scattered messily. Her face was stained with blood, and even her hospital gown was dirty. At this moment, Li Dongqiang stood in front of the hospital bed and kicked her body from time to time. He opened his mouth and scolded, I told you to return the money, but you didn't listen to me, did you? Do you really think that I can't do anything to you just because you're hiding in the hospital? B*TCH. Brother Chang, I don't have money. I really don't have money. No money. I think you don't want to return it. If you don't want to, I'll take out your photos for others to admire. Who knows, maybe they can be sold for a good price. He suddenly took out a stack of photos in his hand. It was unknown what kind of unsightly content was in the photos. When Yun Na saw it, she immediately turned pale with fright. She immediately knelt down and reached out to snatch it. No, when Li Dongqiang saw her, he got angry and kicked her to the corner of the wall. Yun Na's head slammed into the wall, and blood immediately flowed out of her head. She coughed out a mouthful of blood. How disgusting, muttered Yun Tianyu coldly. Li Qin also rushed over. However, when she stood at the door and saw the messy ward, she froze on the spot and did not dare to step in. She didn't dare. She didn't have the guts. Li Dongqiang was a well-known hooligan in this area. It was not that they had not seen his methods before. He was vicious and merciless. She did not know how he managed to find his way to the hospital. As soon as he stepped into the ward, he threw Yun Na onto the ground with a slap. Li Qin was scared out of her wits by the commotion. Knowing that the debt collectors had come knocking on her door, she hurriedly ran out of the ward, hoping to find Yun Yeqing and Yun Shishir to settle this matter. Both Yun Yeqing and Yun Shishir were rich. If she were to ask them for money and return it, they wouldn't be so heartless as to leave her in the lurch. However, now, looking at her daughter, who was in such a miserable state, crying and begging for mercy with a bloody face, she could not move her feet. She was afraid that she would be implicated if she went in. She could not take a beating. Chapter 306. Li Dongqiang was not afraid at all. At this moment, he was in public. The other patients and their family members in the ward had already fled the ward in fear. Li Dongqiang was not a busybody. He was only here to find Yun Na to repay the debt he owed. He would not cause trouble for other unrelated people. Li Qin, who was standing at the door, was so frightened that her legs turned to jelly. She was so frightened that she wanted to cry but did not dare to make a sound. She could only hide at the side and panic. Yun Tianyu looked at her coldly. In the face of disaster, the mother-daughter relationship was just this. This was a debt she had caused, so she had to bear it herself. Misfortune came with evil, the wheel of fortune had turned. With that thought in mind, he wanted to leave. However, just as he took a step, he heard Yun Na's anguished screams from the ward. I really don't have money. Brother Chang, my sister has money. She has money, you can ask her for it. I'm her sister, her only sister. She'll definitely help me pay it back. Yun Tianyu stopped in his tracks. The corners of his eyes were instantly dyed with cold anger. His body emitted a dangerous and frightening aura. He turned his head and looked into the ward. Yun Na was crying bitterly as she hugged Li Dongqiang's trouser leg. She seemed to be clutching at the last straw as she said with reddened eyes, my sister has money. You can ask her for it, she'll definitely help me pay it back. She was the one who helped me pay the previous debt. Yun Tianyu was startled and clenched his fists tightly. Mommy helped her pay the debt. When, he actually did not know. Yun Na, haven't I made myself clear to you that day? Didn't you make me suffer enough last time? You said that your sister was pure, lovely, and a stunner. You even said that you wanted to give her to me to pay off your debt. What happened in the end, though? Not only was your sister not a virgin, but she also had an illegitimate child. More importantly, she had a sugar daddy behind her. I didn't even touch her, and I was almost killed. Do you think I'll fall for your trick again this time? Find trouble with her. Even if you have the guts, I won't dare to. You should be the one asking. I don't dare to provoke her again. Yun Tianyu's brows knitted tightly, and his face turned pale in an instant. Don't force me, Brother Chang. Yun Na cried helplessly. At that time, I really didn't know what kind of sugar daddy was taking care of her. You didn't know, but now you know. Damn it, I've never seen someone as heartless as you. Your elder sister has always doted on you. That day, I sent someone to ask her to collect the debt. From her tone, it seems like this isn't the first time she's cleaned up your mess. If I hadn't threatened her with her son, she wouldn't have cared about you. Suddenly, a child's tender voice came from the door. When did this happen? Li Dongqiang looked back and saw Yun Tianyu standing at the door with a pale face. His beautiful eyes were as deep and empty as a bottomless abyss. Where did this little baby come from? Li Dongqiang frowned and scolded. You don't need to know who I am. Explain what you said just now. Yun Tianyu was not in the mood to care about his rude words. His tone was gloomy and cold, but his voice was unique to a child's, yet it was tinged with a chilling and dangerous aura. Li Dongqiang was stunned. Although the child in front of him looked no more than 6 or 7 years old, he was shockingly mature. His powerful aura almost overshadowed his sharpness. In front of a little boy, he actually lost the limelight. Chapter 307. What did you say? Why should I explain it to you? Li Dongqiang raised his head to look at the crowd outside the door and demanded fiercely, whose child ran out? Quickly take him away. The crowd dispersed in fright. Yun Tianyu coldly said, aren't you here to collect a debt? Explain it clearly, and I'll pay for her. You're just a child, where did you get the money? I have it. Li Hanlin, who was behind him, stepped forward with a smile. Li Dongqiang was even more confused now. Seeing this, Yun Na seemed to see the light of hope. She immediately pointed at Yun Tianyu and said, He is my sister's son. Oh. Is that Yun Shushu your mommy? You don't have to care so much. I'm just asking you, how much does she owe you? Yun Tianyu asked coldly. He did not look at Yun Na, as if he was afraid of dirtying his eyes with just one look, 500,000 yuan. Yun Tianyu tilted his head and said in a low voice, agently, yes. Li Hanlin immediately took out a stack of checks from his briefcase, wrote a string of numbers on it, signed it, and flashed it to Li Dongqiang. 1 million yuan. Li Dongqiang's eyes widened. Oh, this child is not simple. Yun Na watched with tears in her eyes until Li Hanlin flashed the amount on the check. Her face lit up with hope, but it was soon followed by disbelief. Who was this man in a suit? One look and one could tell that he was an elite, so why was he so respectful toward Yun Tianyu? Li Qin, who was standing at the door, was also dumbfounded. Who exactly was this man? How could he casually write a check for 1 million yuan? What was more shocking was that this man was submissive and obedient to Yun Tianyu, a child. What was the relationship between these two? Li Qin could not figure it out. Li Dongqiang smiled wickedly and went forward to take the check. Li Hanlin's hand, which was holding the check, moved slightly, and he caught nothing but air. Are you playing with me? Li Dongqiang was slightly annoyed. Yun Tianyu expressionlessly said, you haven't explained what you meant by your words earlier. Li Dongqiang smiled and grabbed Yun Na's collar. He patted her bleeding cheek and said, she's your mommy's sister, right? Ha, he took drugs and gambled outside and owed me a huge debt. But this bitch doesn't have any money. I threatened her and told her that I would go to her house to collect the debt. She was scared silly. Guess what she said? Li Dongqiang was a hoodlum, so his words were naturally sinister. His face was ferocious, and he looked like a ruffian. Yun Tianyu hummed and waited for him to continue. She said that she wants to use her sister to repay her debt. Li Dongqiang said slowly. Yun Tianyu's face instantly changed. It was as dark as ink. His pair of bright eyes immediately seemed to be covered by a dark haze, and a thick vicious aura constantly surged in his eyes. Go on, he ordered. Li Dongqiang was stunned. He was a little displeased. A child was talking to him with such a condescending attitude. However, he didn't think too much about it and continued speaking. She said that her older sister was so beautiful and refined. When I heard it, my heart ached. Get to the point. Yun Tianyu was a little impatient. D*mn, you little b** starred. Li Dongqiang was furious. Chapter 308. Li Dongqiang swallowed his saliva and could only continue. She made an agreement with me. She would send her lovely sister here to accompany me for a few nights, and that debt would be written off. Hearing this, Yun Tianyu remained silent for a long time. He only stared at Yun Na with a gloomy expression. His expression was so cold that it was frightening. She didn't succeed in the end, though. In the end, she was kidnapped by the Mu family. The Mu family? Li Hanlin was startled. Mu Yaja. He. Yun Tianyu suddenly let out a few desolate chuckles. His slightly narrowed eyes suddenly opened and stared fixedly at Yun Na. His gaze was so deep that it seemed to pierce a hole in her body. So, that's how it is. He. Yun Tianyu held his forehead with his hand. His desolate laughter echoed in the room, making one's hair stand on end. Yun Na had never seen this side of Yun Tianyu before. In front of Yun Shishir, he had always been obedient and adorable. Now, however, he tore apart all his pretense and revealed himself to be cold and deep. It was as if even his surroundings were filled with a frightening aura of hostility. Especially his deep eyes, which flashed with a hint of madness and ruthlessness. You. What are you laughing at? He. Yun Tianyu shrugged his shoulders and laughed even more wantonly. He closed his eyes and those dark memories squeezed into his thoughts. In the scene, Yun Na pressed him onto the bed and ruthlessly slapped his body one after another. She pulled his ears and said in a sinister voice over and over again, "Little B****, go ahead and cry. Go ahead and make a fuss. Your mommy isn't at home right now. Let's see who's going to help you. Who will protect you?" Those dusty memories, under the stimulation, broke out of their cage and flashed before his eyes like a merry-go-round. He. His slightly trembling laughter contained the pain of his memories being torn apart. Li Dongqiang shook his head and sighed. "I didn't expect you to be willing to pay for her debt. Repaying evil with good, isn't it? She harmed your mommy, don't you hate her?" "Hate?" Yun Tianyu opened his eyes abruptly. There was a flash of murderous intent in his eyes. How could he not hate her? Overflowing hatred. Sigh, I originally wanted to throw her into the pond to feed the fish. Initially, when he heard that she was going to enter the entertainment industry as a celebrity, he even took a bunch of pornographic photos of her to blackmail her. Now that she was disfigured, her acting career had come to an end. "Since you're paying for her debt, I'll give you these photos." Li Dongqiang passed the photo to Yun Tianyu and reached for Li Hanlin's check again. Li Hanlin coldly grabbed his wrist, rendering him unable to move. "Why, are you going back on your word? Did I say that I'll repay her debt?" Yun Tianyu's voice was cold and mocking. Yun Na's heart leaped to her throat again. She thought that she was saved, so why was Yun Tianyu going back on his word? Could it be that the check was fake? Did he not mean what he said just now? His heart was like a roller coaster, hanging high for a moment, then falling to the bottom of the valley. "Then what you said just now," Yun Tianyu coldly retorted, "she owes you so much money, yet you're throwing her into the pond. How pitiful is that? Poor mommy, all the grievances she had suffered all these years were written off so easily." Chapter 309. Throwing her into the pond like this is too merciful. He suddenly threw the photo in his hand into the air and sneered. "Chop her up and feed her to the sharks. Her death is not worth pitying." His voice was clearly so innocent, but it was now very deep and penetrating. It was as cold and eerie as the tide. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth, and it was inexplicably hair-raising. Yun Na was so shocked that she hid behind Li Dongqiang in fright. In her heart, Yun Tianyu was no less terrifying than Li Dongqiang, who had been in the underworld for decades. In fact, he might even be more terrifying. Li Qin, who was at the door, was so frightened that she forgot to breathe. At this moment, no one considered that Yun Tianyu was only 6 years old. His words were probably just a child's babble. They only saw the bone-chilling expression on his young face. Cold and hateful, he looked at Yun Na as if she were something filthy. "Little kid. Are you joking?" Li Dongqiang laughed awkwardly for a while. How could he be so ruthless at such a young age? It was indeed scary. "Joking?" Yun Tianyu said gravely. "My time is precious. Why would I joke with you?" Then, Li Dongqiang's throat was dry. He licked his lips. Even he could not help but respect this 6-year-old boy. "You mean, I'll give you the money. You deal with the person. Do you understand?" Li Dongqiang was still in disbelief. He looked suspiciously at Li Hanlin, who was beside him, only to see the latter looking down at the little lad with a frown. His eyes were filled with indescribable heartache and complexity. "Agent Li, you. Li Hanlin suddenly squatted in front of him and held his shoulders with a worried look. "Don't be blinded by hatred." Yun Tianyu did not seem to hear his advice and coldly said, "Give him the money." He did not want to deal with this kind of person personally. He was afraid that it would dirty his hands. Li Hanlin's expression was complicated. I want you to give him money. Do you understand?" Yun Tianyu gripped his wrist with a pale face. His pair of black eyes stared straight ahead. Li Hanlin stared at Li Dongqiang's pale face and frowned. Finally, he stood up and handed the check to Li Dongqiang. Yun Na and Li Qin froze on the spot as if they were struck by lightning. Li Dongqiang seemed to be familiar with this kind of thing. He verified the authenticity of the check and confirmed that it was genuine. Once again, he felt incredulous. This child was not simple at all. At such a young age, he already had a boldness that ordinary adult men couldn't match, and even wealth. Even though he still couldn't figure out his identity, knowing too much might not be a good thing for him. All right, I'll take that person away. When the time comes, I'll take some photos for you to enjoy. Just as Li Dongqiang finished speaking, Yun Na, who was at the side, wailed and crawled to Yun Tianyo's side. Hugging his frail body, she begged for mercy. Why you, it's Auntie's fault. It's Auntie's fault. Auntie was blind in the past. It's Auntie's fault. Auntie swears that I won't bully you or your mommy anymore. Yun Tianyu looked straight ahead as if he did not hear her. He did not even look at her. Chapter 310. How ironic. In the past, whenever Yun Na saw him, she would look at him with cold disdain and call him a little b*****. Now, she was kneeling beside him, kowtowing and begging for mercy. Li Hanlin, who was behind him, bent over and flung her hand away from his shoulder. Li Qin, too, crawled to Yun Tianyo's feet on all fours. Tears streamed down her face as she kowtowed and admitted her mistake. You don't really want to kill us, do you? At least, for the sake of your grandfather, please let us live. You're hiring a hitman. It's illegal and unacceptable. Oh. Hiring a hitman. Yun Tianyu muttered to himself nonchalantly and smiled slyly. Did anyone hear that? There was dead silence in the room. Who would believe a 6-year-old child's words? A 6-year-old child hiring a hitman to kill someone was simply a fantasy. In the suffocating silence, Yun Na kowtowed heavily on the floor and said hoarsely, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm wrong, I know I'm wrong. She wailed heartbreakingly as she reached out to hug Yun Tianyu. Yun Tianyu did not even look at her and coldly waved her hand away. Don't touch me, it's dirty. Woo woo woo. You. Yun Na's teary eyes were filled with despair and sorrow. Unforgivable, unforgivable, Yun Tianyo's shoulders trembled slightly. He turned around and coldly said, Li Qin, 6 years ago, you caused my mommy to become a single mother at the age of 18. She sacrificed herself for the Yun family, but how did you treat her? Abruptly, he enunciated each word clearly. Li Qin, I've long wanted to get rid of you. Yun Na sobbed and begged, give us another chance. Yun Tianyu said, it's not that I didn't give you a chance, you didn't cherish it. Li Qin was stunned. I became so strong in order to protect my mommy. You hurt my mommy again and again, yet you want me to forgive you? Impossible. With that, he turned and walked out of the ward. Li Dongqiang's men soon arrived. Li Qin cried behind him, you can't be that cruel, right? Yun Tianyu ignored her and quickly left the ward. Behind him were Li Qin and Yun Na's despairing faces. Back in the ward, he closed the door behind him. Yun Tianyu stood at the doorway, looking cold and ruthless. When Li Hanlin saw this, his heart ached and he hugged him tightly. Her weak body seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow. Although he wasn't his child, after a year of master-servant relationship, he had already treated him as half a family member. After witnessing his ruthless means in the business world, he was in awe of this child from the bottom of his heart. However, in front of Yun Shishir, he looked innocent and cute. When he looked at Yun Shishir, his eyes were pure and untainted. This purity was without any pretense, as if this was how he should be. However, hatred had dyed this purity black. He originally thought that it was because of his superb acting skills that he was able to switch between the front and the back. But now, it seemed that he no longer thought so. What kind of childhood did this child have that he could do such a cruel thing? Cruel, to a child, it was especially cruel. He did not know how dark his childhood was to be able to gnash his teeth in hatred to kill someone. Chapter 311. At the Mu residence. Mu Yaja parked his car in the garage and walked into the living room. Both Mu Sheng and Mu Wanru were there. Grandpa Mu sat in the armchair with a solemn expression. Mu Wanru, who was kneeling beside him, was carefully massaging his legs and massaging them from time to time. Grandpa Mu's face turned ashen when he saw Mu Yaja. He snorted coldly. "You finally know how to come home, Grandpa." Mu Yaja greeted him. Mu Wanru looked at him. She opened her mouth a few times but did not say anything. Grandpa Mu slammed the table. He was obviously furious. "Where have you been for the past 2 days? You still know about this house?" "I was busy." "Busy? What were you busy with?" "You were busy with a woman's bed." Grandpa Mu was furious. Mu Wanru immediately patted his chest that was heaving up and down due to his anger. She said gently, "Grandpa, don't be angry. Don't hurt your body. He must be busy with the company's affairs. That's why." "Humph. He's busy. Wanru, you're always thinking of him, but has he ever thought of you?" Mu Wanru's face stiffened. Her eyes were filled with grievance. The atmosphere in the living room was extremely tense. It was as if a storm was brewing. Mu Yaja sat on the sofa and brewed a cup of tea. He looked calm as if he did not care about Grandpa Mu's anger. Grandpa Mu was furious when he saw Mu Siju's nonchalant attitude. "Who did you give the bungalow at Shangdi Walk to?" Grandpa Mu narrowed his eyes. His face was gloomy. Mu Yaja furrowed his brows. It was obvious that his every move in the past few days was being monitored. Grandpa Mu soon heard about what he had done 15 minutes ago. This realization made him somewhat displeased. Hence, he remained silent in the face of Grandpa Mu's interrogation. Not talking. Seeing that Mu Yaja was silent, he sat up straight and threw a file in front of Mu Yaja. He asked coldly, "At least explain this matter clearly." Mu Yaja expressionlessly took out a stack of documents and a few photos from the folder and glanced at them coldly. Sure enough, Grandpa Mu had sent someone to investigate Yun Tianyu. Mu Wanru also walked over curiously and picked up the photos. Her expression froze and her heart sank. She did not know that he was investigating Yun Tianyu. He had no idea. Mu Wanru secretly gritted her teeth. The situation did not develop as she had expected. If Mu Xing were to investigate Yun Tianyu, he would definitely find out about Yun Shishir. At that time, if they found out about the incident from more than 10 years ago, Mu Wanru's heart was suddenly in her throat and her breathing stopped. Mu Xing was in a fit of anger, so he did not notice her abnormality. He only asked coldly, "Have you investigated this child's matter clearly?" Mu Yaja's deep gaze fell on Mu Wanru, who was unsettled, and he slowly answered, "No. I think this child is about 6 or 7 years old." "When did this happen?" He angrily said, "I don't care how this child came about. Anyway, the Mu family's bloodline can't be outside. Bring him back." Mu Wanru returned to her senses and quickly said, "Grandpa, let's put this matter aside for now. We haven't investigated the matter clearly. Isn't it too hasty to make such a decision?" Chapter 312. Mu Wanru's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. Mu Yaja remained silent. Seeing that, Grandpa Mu bellowed, "Give me an explanation for this matter as soon as possible." "You summoned me back just for this matter?" Mu Yaja frowned. It was not that he had never thought of letting you return to the Mu family. However, now was not the time. He already had solid evidence in his hands, but he was still a little short of it. Of course not. Grandpa Mu calmed his anger and said in a low voice, "Arrange your marriage with Wanru as soon as possible." Mu Wanru's face lit up with joy when she heard that. She pretended to be shy and asked, "Grandpa, why so sudden marriage?" Mu Yaja's eyes twitched dangerously. "Why? If you don't arrange it as soon as possible, how long do you want to delay it? She's your fiancé and your childhood sweetheart. Now that both of you are of age, your marriage naturally can't be delayed any longer. Otherwise, I won't feel at ease even if it's delayed for a moment." Grandpa Mu slammed his walking stick on the floor as he yelled in annoyance. Mu Wanru's heart skipped a beat when she saw Mu Yaja's cold face. She hugged Grandpa Mu's shoulders aggrievedly and said, "Grandpa, we're not ready yet. What do you need to prepare for a marriage? Both of you are already engaged. It's inevitable that the public will be suspicious of you if you delay the wedding. Besides, Wanru, it's not that I want to nag at you. Even if Yaja doesn't care, you should do more. Are you willing to watch your man be seduced by another woman?" Grandpa Mu sized up Mu Yaja as he said that. His voice instantly turned gloomy. "Wanru has been with you for so many years. I won't allow you to let her down. Arrange the marriage as soon as possible, understand?" Mu Yaja remained silent for a while. Suddenly, his lips curled into a deep smile. "I understand, Grandpa. That's good." His answer was like a tranquilizer. Grandpa Mu was finally relieved. Mu Wanru, who was standing at the side, was also overjoyed. She thought that Mu Yaja would try his best to reject the marriage, but he actually agreed to it. "Wanru, both of you must be well." Grandpa Mu was overjoyed as he patted the back of her hand gently with a kind look on his face. She reservedly replied, "Thank you, Grandpa. Grandpa, I'm tired. I'm going back to my room first." Mu Yaja expressionlessly said that and went upstairs. Grandpa Mu immediately signaled to Mu Wanru with his eyes, and the latter immediately understood. Lifting her skirt, she followed Mu Yaja into the bedroom. Once they were, he, Unrao and Wanru. And Wanru saw this. Mu's when she when. Then, she immediately went forward to help him change his clothes. The man glanced at her from the corner of his eye. His expression was distant as he dodged her actions. Mu Wanru froze on the spot as if she had been petrified. His indifference caused her to be at a loss of what to do. She felt uneasy. After pondering for a while, she finally mustered her courage to speak. "You seem to be so cold to me recently. Why? Am I?" Mu Yaja did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on the floor-to-ceiling window. He casually pulled his collar and took off his shirt. His tone was cold. Mu Wanru's heart tightened. She felt wronged. "Of course, you're always cold to me. Why? Haven't I always been like this?" His leisurely attitude made her feel even more embarrassed. However, she had no other choice. She could not choose to retreat. There was no way out for her. Chapter 313. Grandpa Mu was whispering in her ear. If the man was not proactive enough, as a woman, she should let go of her modesty. She was proud of her modesty. She used to be so reserved too. However, Mu Yaja was like a proud and free wind, unpredictable. She did not even know how to talk to him to attract his attention. He had been extremely cold to her since they were young. On one hand, it should be his resistance to this marriage. On the other hand, maybe he was not interested in her at all. Mu Wanru clenched her fists and slowly took a step forward. Why don't you touch me?" Mu Yaja opened his eyes slightly, his gaze was cold but he did not say a word. She watched as the man casually pulled off his tie and took off his shirt. His elegant and calm expression made it seem as if she didn't exist. Mu Wanru's face was full of embarrassment. Seeing that he was about to enter the bathroom, she immediately took a step forward nervously and forced a smile. Is it because I'm not attractive to you? Or is it because I'm not proactive enough? She paused and hurriedly said, I can take the initiative as long as you like it. Mu Yaja turned his face away impatiently. Bang! What responded to her was the sound of the bathroom door closing. Click. The door was locked. Mu Wanru's legs went soft and she collapsed on the ground as if she had collapsed. She rubbed her hair in annoyance and felt wronged. She wanted to cry but no tears came out. This man had always been so cold. It was the same for everyone. When they were young, Mu Yaja was not close to her. At first, to her who had just stepped into the Mu family, this young man exuded a heart-palpitating coldness and always avoided anyone who wanted to get close to him. She had no choice but to accept this. For so long, Mu Yaja had never had a woman by his side, which made her feel more at ease. But why did he have to treat that Yunshusher? What was so good about that Yunshusher? Why did this man who had always been cold take her to heart? Thinking of this, Mu Wanru's heart was filled with resentment. No, he had to act quickly. That Alan was incompetent. She had to find another way to get rid of Yunshusher as soon as possible. Voila, the bathroom door opened. Mu Yaja walked out of the bathroom in a brocade bathrobe. His tall figure and slightly open collar revealed his sexy and well-defined muscles. She looked even more graceful and luxurious. His slightly damp hair was slightly messy, but it didn't diminish his handsomeness at all. Instead, it made him even more handsome and charming. Seeing that she was still there, Mu Yaja's eyes flashed with disgust. Why haven't you left? Mu Wanru said cautiously, Grandpa asked me to sleep in your room tonight. Sleep with me? The man asked coldly. He lit a cigarette and took a deep puff. He rarely smoked, unless it was an important social event or when he was extremely frustrated, then he would light up a cigarette. It could be seen that he was not in a good mood tonight. Mu Wanru stubbornly did not move an inch. I know you might not be ready, and I don't want to be so fast. But Grandpa's health is not good, so I can only follow his wishes. He instructed me to do this. I don't want to anger him, I'm afraid he'll hurt his body. Mu Yaja narrowed his handsome eyes and looked at her. She actually came up with such a dignified reason, ridiculous. You want me, okay. Chapter 314. Mu Wanru's face was full of shyness. She gently unbuttoned her dress and slowly approached him. As she walked step by step, her long dress fell off her body and fell to the ground. Her fair and smooth body was completely exposed to the cold air. Mu Yaja's pupils constricted. A hint of suppressed anger flashed in the depths of his handsome eyes. Tonight, I'll give myself to you. You want me, okay. The woman walked in front of him. A pair of arms slowly wrapped around the man's sturdy waist. Her delicate lips softly pressed against his chest. She was trying to melt his cold heart with her tenderness. When she was looking forward to the man's next move, the man's cold voice came from the top of her head. Put it on. What? She was shocked. She raised her head in surprise but looked into a pair of deep eyes. Put it on and get lost. His voice was as cold as ice colliding. Before Mu Wanru could react, Mu Yaja fiercely pinched her chin and said with a face full of disgust, even if you want to, you have to see if I'm interested in you. I advise you, don't try your best to show off your charm. Don't you think you're very cheap? Cheap? He asked back, what? Isn't it? Don't you think you're disgusting? Mu Yaja pushed her away heavily, if you want to seduce me, please show me some real ability. Otherwise, it will only make me more disgusted. Mu Wanru was pushed to the ground. She was in so much pain that she frowned. Embarrassed, humiliated, and broken down, she cried with red eyes, "What kind of woman do you like? I can change for you. Do you like Yunshushu? Pure and innocent. If you were half of her, you wouldn't be so disgusting." Mu Wanru was stunned. Tears flowed freely from her eyes. The man didn't even look at her. He only felt disgusted. He hooked her with his toes and covered her body with her clothes. "Get lost." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, followed by Xiao Yichen's childish voice. "Daddy, can I come in?" The door wasn't locked, so Xiao Yichen tiptoed and pushed the door open. However, as soon as he opened the door, he was greeted with an unbearable scene. He saw Mu Wanru lying on the ground, completely naked, with only a dress barely covering her body. At the side, Mu Yaja stood coldly at the side, his face as dark as ink. "Daddy." Xiao Yichen was shocked. His face turned red and he quickly turned around. I'm sorry, come here." Seeing the little fellow, Mu Yaja bent over slightly and called out. Xiao Yichen blushed. He had never seen a naked woman before. Since he was young, he had been taught the etiquette of a gentleman. Therefore, it was a taboo. When he heard his daddy's call, he covered his eyes and ran into Mu Yaja's arms. Mu Yaja hugged him and covered his eyes with his large palm. He turned his head and glared coldly at Mu Wanru, telling her to get lost. Mu Wanru hurriedly put on her clothes. Embarrassed and angry, she ran away. The door closed again, and silence returned. Xiao Yichen pushed his wide palm away and asked curiously, "Daddy, why isn't Mommy wearing any clothes?" "She's hot," Mu Yaja said calmly. "It's raining outside. It's very cold." Xiao Yichen mumbled. The scene just now was too impactful. His heart still hadn't calmed down. "Have you finished your homework?" "Yes. I finished it a long time ago." Xiao Yichen smiled and hugged his neck. "I'll sleep with Daddy tonight, okay?" Chapter 315. By the time Yunshushu rushed to the hospital, it was already late at night. Perhaps it was because she had not slept a wink the entire night that she fell asleep on the sofa while she was packing her clothes. In the end, a call from her manager woke her up. "Remember to come to Huanyu to sign the contract next Monday." Sure, congratulations on signing a contract with Huanyu Entertainment. This is a very smooth first step. He called to inform her not to miss the signing ceremony with Huanyu next Monday. She hung up the call and looked out of the window. It was already drizzling. She could not help feeling a little dazed. She had actually entered the entertainment industry. Would her career progress be smooth in the future? She rushed to the hospital and hurriedly pushed open the ward door. Yunshushu was also a little surprised by the luxurious VIP ward. In the living room, Yu was sitting in Yun Yeching's arms, flipping through the comic the latter had bought in boredom. Only the heavens knew how bored he was to be flipping through the comic books that he usually disdained. When he saw Yunshushu, he immediately pounced into her arms barefooted. "Mommy, you're finally here. I thought you were going to leave Yu alone in the hospital again." "How could that be?" Yunshushu reached out and gently patted Yu's head. She only calmed down when she saw that his complexion had regained some color. She smiled slightly and asked, "Yu, have you eaten?" "Yes, I have. If I wait for my stupid mommy to send food over, Yu will be so hungry that smoke will come out of my 7 orifices." Yun Tianyu pouted in dissatisfaction. His tone was full of grievance and resentment. Yunshushu did not know whether to laugh or cry. "You even learned an idiom. Did the principal teach you that? Cough. It's Yu's mommy who taught me well, Lee Hanlon said awkwardly at the side. Yu coolly said, my mommy never cares about my homework, nor does she sign me up for any interest classes. Basically, Yun Shishir was not willing to impose any heavy learning on the child. She believed that childhood should be enjoyed. Yun Yicheng dialed Li Qin's number, but the call did not get through. He had gone to Yun Na's ward earlier, but she had already left. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't contact the two of them. It was as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. Although he had doubts in his heart, he didn't care about it anymore. Late at night, a van sped along the highway. In the pitch-black carriage, Yun Na slowly woke up. At the instant she opened her eyes, the intense pain that came from her body stimulated her nerves, and she recalled exactly what had happened. After being taken away from the hospital, Li Dongqiang tied her and Li Qin up and threw them into a van. She struggled fiercely, crying and begging for mercy in a heart-wrenching manner. An enormous fear shrouded her heart. She didn't dare imagine that she would fall to such a state. What's going on? What's going on? How could Yun Tianyu be so capable? He was only 6 years old. How could he be so heaven-defying? She seemed to remember that the man in the suit respectfully called him President Yun. President Yun. At such a young age. She had yet to figure out the ins and outs of the situation. Li Dongqiang saw that she was crying and throwing a tantrum, so he knocked her out with a knife. Yun Na only remembered that her vision turned black, and then she fainted and lost consciousness. When she woke up, she was in an enclosed space with no ventilation. It was stuffy and hot. She opened her mouth to call for help, only to realize that her mouth was taped shut. Other than moaning, she could not make any sound. Chapter 3:16. She struggled a few times to sit up, but her feet suddenly touched something soft. She was shocked and shrank into a corner. With her weak consciousness, she could tell that it was a person beside her feet. The skin was still warm, and based on the material of the clothes, she guessed that it was Li Qin. In her shock, she leaned toward Li Qin. Then, both mother and daughter woke up. However, in such an enclosed space, the two of them fell into a huge panic. With her weak vision, she seemed to be able to tell that they were in a car. Where were they going? After a bumpy ride, the car suddenly came to a steady stop. Then, there was a deathly silence. Yun Na's shoulders trembled. In her great fear, she seemed to have lost the ability to think. She only hoped that time would stop at this moment. She didn't even know what was waiting for her next. Would it be hell? She trembled as her imagination ran wild. Just as she was at a loss for what to do, the car door was suddenly flung open. Li Dongqiang stood outside the car with a group of ruffians with a cigarette in his mouth. He sneered a few times and pulled Yun Na out of the car by her hair. She screamed. Li Dongqiang frowned in displeasure and slapped her. Be quiet. What are you shouting for? He roared. Yun Na looked at him with teary eyes. Her mouth was taped shut, so she couldn't speak at all. She could only cry and beg for mercy. She knelt on the ground with a thud and kept kowtowing. Every time she kowtowed, she hit the ground hard. Her head was bleeding and she tried her best to beg for mercy to show her sincerity. In the face of fear, she didn't know what pain was anymore. She was numb. She only knew how to kowtow and fantasize that she could arouse Li Dongqiang's pity and spare her life. She had met Li Dongqiang before. He was cruel and merciless, and his hands were stained with blood. It wasn't that she hadn't seen him kill people. One shot and the head exploded. She was so scared that she vomited on the spot. However, the young her thought that such a man was cool and manly. However, when she faced death, she suddenly understood that life was so fragile. She didn't want to die. Her pleas for mercy did not awaken anyone's pity. Li Dongqiang clicked his tongue and shook his head. Yun Na, if you knew this would happen, why did you give it up? What's the use of begging me for mercy? I'm just working for someone else's money. Yun Na was scared out of her wits. She shook her head like a broken wave, and she kowtowed even more vigorously. As she neared death, the fear in her heart expanded infinitely. At first, when she found out that she was disfigured, she was so disheartened that she thought of killing herself. However, it wasn't until the word death was right in front of them that they realized that when they were close to death, a strong will to live would arise spontaneously. She didn't want to die, she didn't want to die. Even if he had to live an ignoble existence, he still wanted to live. Li Qin was also carried out of the carriage. Her body went limp and she no longer had the strength to beg for mercy. She was not like Yun Na, who was still young. She was already old, and her physical strength was very poor. The journey was bumpy, and as soon as she got out of the car, she vomited, felt dizzy, and was in a mess. Li Dongqiang felt nauseous. The evening breeze at the port made one's cheeks hurt. The whistle of a ship could be heard in the distance. Chapter 317. When Yun Na realized where she was petrified as if she had been struck by lightning. The harbor, was Li Dongqiang really going to listen to that child and throw them into the sea to feed the fish? Do you have any last words to say? He looked at Yun Na with pity. She had been playing with them since junior high, so it was inevitable for her to develop some revolutionary feelings. Thus, he showed her rare kindness. Yun Na shook her head with a pale face. She did not want to die. However, he mistakenly thought that she had no last words to say when she shook her head, so he signaled to the people beside him with his eyes. Remember to clean it up. Got it, Brother Chang. Li Dongqiang sneered. He stopped in front of Yun Na and gently patted her head. Sigh, poor thing. Tell me, why are you so silly? It's not that I don't want to help you, after all, we had a brief relationship before. However, you're the one who schemed against me first, so don't blame me for not caring about our relationship. With that, he stood up and watched helplessly as they were dragged away by a few footmen. Yun Na struggled with her legs flailing as she broke down and cried. At the harbor, a cargo ship was quietly anchored. Li Dongqiang was not an ordinary gangster. He had a powerful underworld organization behind him. He was involved in arms, drugs, money laundering, and everything else. Hence, he naturally had his own cargo ship. His subordinates threw Yun Na and Li Qin on the deck of the ship. With a thud, Li Qin's head hit the guardrail and she fainted. Yun Na could only watch helplessly as the cargo ship gradually left the harbor. The despair in her heart grew infinitely. Yuntinho's condition quickly stabilized. The attending doctor paid special attention to it and prescribed him medication to stabilize his condition before informing him to be discharged on Sunday. On the day of his discharge, from the attending doctor to the director, a row of people lined up at the entrance to respectfully send them off. Was there a need to be so high profile? Yun Shishir was speechless. Before Yu was discharged, she had already tidied up the house. She spent half a day tidying up Yu's study room. When the car drove into Xiangdi Walk's bungalow district, Yun Yeqing's expression changed. Shishir, did you drive the car to the wrong place? Why did you drive here? This is the villa district. Yun Shishir broke out in cold sweat. Dad, we didn't drive the wrong way. It was only when the three of them stood at the entrance that Yuntinho's expression changed slightly. Mommy, this isn't our house, is it? It's our new home. Yun Shishir face-bombed, not knowing how to explain. That man inexplicably gave her a bungalow and called it a gift. The average price of the houses here is more than 100,000 yuan. Shishir, you. Yun Yeqing's face turned pale in disbelief. You might not believe me even if I tell you. Yun Shishir took a deep breath and explained, I exchanged it for 2 bowls of noodles. Yun Yeching, who would believe that? The two of them fell silent. 2 bowls of noodles in exchange for a house worth tens of millions. What kind of joke was this? His brows furrowed slightly. Suddenly, he thought of something and smiled without saying a word. He knew who it was. He was not used to living in his previous apartment. It was quite unsafe with all kinds of people. Especially at night, when the apartment was near the notorious East Street. Xiangdi Walk, Dragon Court Real Estate Group, was under Dishing Financial Group. Chapter 318. Just as the 3 were about to enter the house, they heard the roar of a motorcycle coming from afar. Yun Shishir turned her head in surprise, only to see a handsome heavy-duty motorcycle parked at the garage entrance of the villa next door. A tall and slender figure came into view. She saw a tall and straight young man wearing a British trench coat and a pair of pitch-black motorcycle leather pants, which wrapped around his long legs, making them look long and stylish. The young man took off his helmet. His neat short hair was dyed white gold. He took off his sunglasses expressionlessly. A handsome face was exposed in front of everyone. Neighbor. He's so tall. It was only when he strode into a villa not far away from them that she reacted to his presence. So, he's our neighbor. He looks so familiar. Where have I seen him before? Stupid mommy, he's not a man. Yu said helplessly. She's a very famous singer. Her stage name is June Mo. Her new album has been released recently, and she's quite popular. She's actually a woman, but she's dressed neutrally. How did you know? Yun Shishir asked in surprise. In her impression, Yu was not very interested in music. He was hopelessly tone-deaf. Because I've seen her on TV before, Yu replied. What Yun Shishir did not know was that before she signed with Huanyu, Yu had already read through all the artistes signed by Huanyu Entertainment. Thus, he had some impression of this female singer. Dad, don't stand there like a fool. The room is already prepared. Let's go in. Yun Shishir said. Yun Yeching was still a little hesitant. Initially, he had planned to move back after Yu was discharged from the hospital. He lowered his head to look at Yu, only to see the little lad looking at him. He felt even more guilty inside. Yu raised his head and glanced at Yun Shishir before turning to smile at Yun Yeching. Grandpa, why don't you stay with us? Yun Yeching stared at him in shock. He thought that Yu would never forgive him. She even thought that the estrangement between them would never be erased. A warm smile appeared on Yu's face. Grandpa, don't worry. It's Mommy's wish to be filial to you and serve you in your old age. You're old now, so we should all be filial to you. Yu is so sensible. Yun Shishir happily planted a kiss on his cheek. She looked up and said, Dad, look. Yu has already said so. The child is so filial. Do you have the heart to reject the child? Yes. Yun Yeching nodded profusely as he repeated the word, yes, several times in a row. His eyes could not help but moisten. The 3 of them chatted and laughed as they entered the villa. Monday. Yun Shishir woke up early, dressed up, and rushed to the headquarters of Huanyu Entertainment. The next night, Qin Zhou specially sent her a message, repeatedly reminding her not to be late. According to tradition, before the signing ceremony, there would be a personal interview with Huanyu's senior director, Ji Lin. Ji Lin, nicknamed Ji Yanluo, was famous for being strict and had a strong sense of punctuality. If the appointed time was not up, he would not be lenient. Previously, there was a newcomer who was good in all aspects, but because he missed the interview, he directly cancelled the contract without mercy. Chapter 319. Just when she was anxious, a Maserati stopped steadily in front of her. The window was lowered, and a handsome young man's feminine face appeared. Yun Shishir frowned slightly and recognized him at a glance. No, it was her. Jun Mo lived in the villa next to hers. Seeing her car stop, Yun Shishir said in a friendly manner, "Hello." Jun Mo took off her glasses and glanced at her with her beautiful eyes. Her thin lips curled up slightly. "Get in." Yun Shishir was a little dumbfounded by these two simple words. What do you mean? It's hard to get a taxi here. Her voice was clear and deep with a hint of hoarseness. It was a kind of feminine between genders. If one didn't listen carefully, it would be difficult to tell her gender. "Aren't you rushing to Huanyu for an interview?" "It's on the way." Even though it was a little abrupt, time was of the essence. She couldn't care less about being pretentious and immediately nodded. "Thank you." She opened the door and sat in the back seat. Jun Mo skillfully turned the steering wheel and stepped on the accelerator. The car sped away from Xiangdi Walk. Yun Shishir put her bag aside and looked around curiously. Her gaze fell on the handsome face in the rearview mirror. The reason why a woman was described as beautiful was because Jun Mo, whether it was her temperament or her dressing, revealed a femininity that was different between men and women. She had the calmness and grace of a man, but also the exquisiteness and delicacy of a woman. This handsomeness had nothing to do with gender. Especially that pair of long and narrow eyes, they were deep and charming. She even felt a little stunned for a moment. In the rearview mirror, Jun Mo glanced at her from the corner of her eye and met her gaze. Yun Shishir looked away awkwardly. The car was cold and damp. After a light rain last night, the weather in the early morning was a little cold. The air in the car was cold, and she was only wearing a thin shirt, so it was inevitable that she felt a little cold. Jun Mo glanced at Yun Shishir's uneasy face in the rearview mirror and asked, "Cold?" "Yes. A little." Jun Mo looked straight ahead again. She didn't say anything but turned on the heater. Not long after, the carriage was filled with warmth. Yun Shishir was touched by her thoughtfulness and immediately thanked her. Jun Mo's lips curled up, but she didn't say anything. She just took out a cigarette from the cigarette box and lit it skillfully. The lighter was a limited edition commemorative God of Fire by Zippo, and it was hard to find one on the market. A wisp of smoke filled the carriage. The smell of smoke was not strong, nor was it pungent. Instead, it smelled good. At least, it was not repulsive. The entire journey was silent. The car sped along, and the scenery outside the window flashed by. "Your name is Yun Shishir, right?" Her eyes lit up. "How do you know my name?" "I saw you at the banquet." Jun Mo was silent for a moment, as if she was considering her words. In the end, she still said two simple words, "Very beautiful." Yun Shishir blushed and smiled. "Thank you." He was a little surprised. Although Jun Mo looked a little arrogant and cold, she wasn't as unapproachable and unexpectedly friendly as she looked on the surface. Jun Mo said, "It's a good opportunity to sign with Huanyu. You have to cherish it." "Yes, I will." The car quickly drove into Huanyu Tower. "I'll drop you off here. I'll go park the car." After saying that, Jun Mo drove the car into the garage. Yun Shishir couldn't help but feel flattered by her kindness. It was like a dream. It was a little unreal. Chapter 320. After all, apart from Xiao Shui, there were very few women who treated her so well since she was a child. Perhaps it was because she was not good at socializing. The darkness of her childhood made her cautious in dealing with people and other aspects. Hence, she did not have many friends. Therefore, she cherished this rare kindness very much. She looked down at the time. There was still some time before the interview. When she walked out of the elevator, Qin Zhou seemed to have just arrived at the company. When he saw her, he was a little surprised. "Aw, sure, you're here so early." "Yes. I couldn't get a taxi at the entrance. Fortunately, someone sent me here in time." "Someone sent you? Who?" Qin Zhou was stunned. "What a coincidence. I think it's June Mo. She learned her name from Yu. June Mo." Qin Zhou frowned slightly. "Where do you live now?" "Xiangdi Walk." Qin Zhou was stunned. Xiangdi Walk was a famous mansion in the capital. Where did she live? "That's a mansion. Why do you live there?" "I won the lottery," Yun Shishir said awkwardly. "You're so lucky." Qin Zhou sighed sincerely. He led her into the office and suddenly thought of something. "Do you have a driver's license?" "Yes, but I don't know how to drive." "Yun Shishir, can you be any more stupid?" Qin Zhou said mercilessly. Yun Shishir said helplessly, "Are you blaming me for not knowing how to drive?" "Well, okay. After you sign the contract, I'll arrange a car for you to take you to and from work." Qin Zhou said and brought her into the office. He filled in some information for her and patiently reminded her, "The person who will be interviewing you later is Huanyu's entertainment director. He's famous for being strict and nicknamed Qi Yanluo. You have to be careful during the interview." "Yes, I will." Yun Shishir finished filling in the information and suddenly looked up. "If I sign the contract, will I have my own manager?" "There is." Qin Zhou took her information and looked through it carefully. "Who will it be?" He, of course it'll be me." Qin Zhou smiled and said, "Xingzhe specifically asked me to take care of you. If you sign the contract with me, I'll take good care of you." Qin Zhou was Huanyu's ace manager. Whether it was his skills, resources, or background, they were all top-notch. Just making Gu Xingze famous was an achievement that no one in Huanyu could compare to. Even a natural idol like Gu Xingze would not be able to reach his current status without Qin Zhou's support. She had to admit that he was a very powerful person. If Gu Xingze was the king of the entertainment industry, then Qin Zhou could be described as the prime minister who supported the emperor wholeheartedly. Gu Xingze was able to get a role in a Hollywood blockbuster as soon as he debuted. He had signed several fashion commercials and produced a large number of albums. The reason was that Qin Zhou had a considerable amount of resources. What was the most important thing in the entertainment industry? Arranged in order: resources, background, strength, talent, aptitude, and appearance. Appearance could be remolded, and it was fine if one was not strong enough. However, resources and background were often things that could not be obtained even if one begged for it. People in the entertainment industry never dared to say harsh words and promote whoever they wanted. However, Qin Zhou had the confidence to do so. No matter who it was, as long as he said harsh words and supported them with all his heart, they would definitely become famous in his hands. Many popular artists had thrown him an olive branch and even hired him with a lot of money, but Qin Zhou was unmoved. Chapter 321. He only had one artist, Gu Xingze, under him. If he spent all his resources on him, others would be jealous. The entertainment industry was full of dangers. Gu Xingze was naturally worried about assigning Yun Shishir to another manager. He was afraid that he would be devoured until not even his bones were left. Therefore, Qin Zhou personally came to manage Yun Shishir. Resources were another matter. At least with Qin Zhou's methods and background, he was definitely a reliable manager. Qin Zhou urged, "Fill in these documents first. The director's office is next door. I'll bring you to see him." There were only 2 offices on the 18th floor of Huanyu. One was for Ji Lin, and the other was for Qin Zhou. It was obvious that Qin Zhou had a pivotal position in Huanyu. Yun Shishir had just finished filling in a stack of documents when Qin Zhou took out another stack of documents like magic. She was stunned. Why are there so many? These are all model contracts. Take a closer look. After the interview, the director will sign it. Is it a contract to sell myself? She rolled her eyes suspiciously. Qin Zhou rolled his eyes back and smiled evilly. Yes, it's a contract to sell yourself. Hurry up and sign it, and you'll be mine. Qin Zhou was good in every way, but he was usually a little indecent and sharp-tongued. She vaguely remembered the last time at Empress Fashion Club, he had stabbed Xiao Dong of the Xiao group with a few words. Xiao Dong had a pair of fierce eyes that wanted to destroy him. Yun Shishir suddenly said strangely, "You seem to be very free today." Where's Xingze? He went to Milan for a fashion show and will return the day after tomorrow, Qin Zhou said and suddenly teased. Why? Do you miss him? Don't talk nonsense, Yun Shishir said angrily. Qin Zhou snorted coldly. How heartless. After a pause, he gossiped again. To be honest, Xingze seems to be a little too concerned about you. Sigh, look at him. He went to Milan to watch the show and left me alone in the company to deal with the mess. Mess? Qin Zhou stretched out his finger and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. With a tired face, he said, yeah, what a huge mess. Naturally, he would not tell Yun Shishir that Gu Xingze had offended Yang Shouqing because of her. He hadn't been able to sleep well for the past few days as he had been dealing with this matter. He didn't know what was wrong with that kid. Of all the people he could have offended, he chose to offend Yang Shouqing, the boss of the European king. During the most glorious period of Hong Kong movies, Yang Shouqing had an unshakable position in the entertainment industry. Even though Hong Kong's movies were gradually declining, Elder Yang's status was still there. He actually went to injure someone. He didn't mind the trouble, but the trouble was that if the Gu family found out about his actions, there would be some criticism. Gu Xingze's brother was even harder to please than Master Yang. He was in a terrible fix. What happened? Just as Yun Shishir finished speaking, there was a sudden commotion outside the door. Qin Zhou frowned and opened the door, only to see Tang Yu blocked at the door of the director's office. She wanted to enter but was stopped by Ji Lin's assistant. Tang Yu's assistant and Tang Yu were in a deadlock, staring at each other. Why is she here? Didn't she already terminate her contract? Qin Zhou sneered and muttered. She still dares to look for Ji Yanluo. Is she looking for a scolding? Chapter 322. Tang Yu terminated the contract. Yun Shishir gossiped for once. Why did Tang Yu terminate the contract? Qin Zhou turned around and complained, My dear miss, don't you read the entertainment news on a regular basis? In any case, you're someone who's about to enter the entertainment industry. You should at least pay attention to the news in the industry. Ha! Yun Shishir was ashamed. I don't usually watch TV. You, tell me. Yun Shishir's gossipy soul was burning fiercely. Qin Zhou sneered. What else can it be? The news about her unspoken rules is all over the city. Huanyu has always valued the image of its artists. Now that she's notorious, who else can they kick out but her? Not only that, as an artist, a few advertisers have withdrawn their contracts with her. The few movies she signed were forced to change actors midway. The losses are huge. She even has to pay the liquidated damages to the company. Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Unspoken rules. She was fine when he saw her at the cocktail party. In just a few days, such a big change happened? Things were still the same, but people had changed. Slap, Qin Zhou was too lazy to explain so much. He just threw a stack of newspapers in front of her. Yun Shishir flipped through it and frowned in surprise. Wow, that was too explosive. But what she didn't know was that it was all fate's fault. If Muyaja hadn't arrived in time, she would have been the one to appear on the headlines. But a certain someone was still oblivious to the ins and outs of the matter and was still reading the newspapers gloatingly. The newspapers published the headlines for a few days, reporting on this incident. Even now, the news was still hot and had been the topic of conversation for the public. Tang Yu returned to the villa with Huan Yu's top management late at night and didn't leave. The reporters arrived in time. What was more shocking was that the two of them were so anxious that they forgot to close the curtains. The reporters took photos and videos and spread them all over the internet. It was too late to ban them. Actually, after the incident, Tang Yu's studio secretly contacted the paparazzi and offered to buy all the videos and photos in their hands at a sky-high price. They wanted to destroy the evidence and at least suppress the limelight at the critical moment. Unfortunately, these reporters refused no matter what. Even with 7 figures, they could only buy a few photos. Who's afraid of who? Their photos had already been bought by a mysterious investor at a high price. He wanted to ruin Tang Yu's reputation. Tang Yu's studio's crisis was just a last-ditch struggle. In just one night, Tang Yu's fans on Weibo had dropped by a few million. At this stage, she was still losing fans. Tang Yu was dumbfounded when he saw that his path to stardom was destroyed. He could not recover from the setback. That was not all. Blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come singly. Huan Yu received several notices in succession. A few advertisers proposed to terminate their contracts. Tang Yu's roles in the TV series and movies that she was filming in were removed. Even if it was a finished film, there was not a single bit of her scene left. Now that her reputation was in tatters, Huan Yu was facing a sky-high penalty for breaching the contract. The higher-ups were furious. For companies, artists were like products. Without popularity, they would have no value. Huan Yu Entertainment and Tang Yu Studio laid their cards on the table and proposed to terminate the contract. Tang Yu was about to face a sky-high penalty of 9 figures. How pitiful. A pitiful person must have something hateful, Yun Shishir said. Chapter 323. Stop fooling around. Yun Shishir slapped his hand away. Just as Tang Yu was feeling depressed, she saw that Qin Zhou's office was open. She rolled her eyes and walked in with a smile. Nobody knew what she was thinking. Chairman Qin. When she saw him, she would first sweetly compliment him. Qin Zhou held shares in Huan Yu. Therefore, artists and staff who were of a lower level had to respectfully address him as Chairman Qin, even if they weren't A-listers. Qin Zhou knew that she was up to no good. He rolled his eyes lazily. What? Tang Yu was about to speak when she entered the room. She was dumbfounded when she saw Yun Shishir, who was sitting at the side and signing an agreement. Yun Shishir. Why are you here? It's none of your business. Mind your own business. Qin Zhou reminded her coldly. Tang Yu remembered what she was here for. She said coquettishly, Chairman Qin, you have to help me. Her soft voice gave Qin Zhou goosebumps all over his body. Don't act coquettishly if you don't know how to. As soon as he spoke, he felt a chill run down his spine and goosebumps appeared all over his body. Help you with what? I don't know which B*TCH did this to me. My reputation is ruined and the company wants to terminate my contract. Chairman Qin, you have a lot of say in the company. Also, you're such a good friend of Director Ji. Can you talk to Director Ji for me? Tang Yu felt wronged too. She was a little drunk at the cocktail party that day. In order to seek a better future, she clung on to Muyaja, thinking that she could climb into his bed. Little did she expect that he would throw her into a car and drive her to Li Wenqing's villa. Li Wenqing was one of Huan Yu's top executives and one of the company's shareholders. He also had a seat on the board of directors. He had played with many women. In a way, he could be considered Tang Yu's old flame. They had been together for a while. The few movie contracts that Tang Yu accepted were all resources provided by him. Tang Yu was a little surprised to see him. However, she thought that it was all arranged and that he had personally picked her. She did not suspect anything. Li Wenqing was also a little suspicious when he saw her. Didn't he personally pick the newcomer from the cocktail party? Her name was Yun Shishir. Why did he send Tang Yu instead? However, in the middle of the night, he had nowhere to vent his lust. As soon as Tang Yu entered the room, the two of them were entangled together. After that, he didn't expect that he would be plotted against. The pictures and text were well illustrated, and the evidence was conclusive. No matter how capable the public relations team was, they were at their wits' end. It would be difficult for them to clear their names. Qin Zhou had a headache and waved his hand. Get lost. Don't bother me. I'm also in a mess. I can't even save myself. There's still a mess that gives CEO Qin a headache. Qin Zhou was annoyed. Tang Yu, now that things have come to this, nobody can save you. If you really want me to point you out a way out, seeing that you're young and have good potential, I'll be kind and introduce you to a film contract. Tang Yu's eyes brightened. He couldn't hide his excitement. Really? President Qin, I knew you wouldn't leave me in the lurch. What kind of movie is it? Qin Zhou smiled evilly. Golden Lotus 3D. F***CK. Playing with her. Jean Ping Mei 3D. That was a third-rate movie, okay? What was this? What kind of kindness was this? He was obviously kicking her when she was down. Was he waiting to see her embarrass herself? No matter what, she was still a B-list starlet. She was also a popular teen idol. How could he let her star in such a low-class movie? You. Tang Yu was so angry that her face turned red. Chapter 324. I'm a teen idol, and you want me to star in a third-rate film? Tang Yu said angrily. Oh. You're still flattering yourself. Teen idol. You made such a big scene this time, and the video is all over the city. Who hasn't seen you naked? Why are you being so pretentious? Qin Zhou mocked. Tang Yu was speechless. Don't underestimate this resource. How many female stars are lining up to be in it? For a role in it, they're fighting so hard. Don't you care? Qin Zhou said disapprovingly. This was a blatant humiliation. Tang Yu felt so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. She said angrily, President Qin, are you hitting me when I'm down? Qin Zhou pretended to be wronged. Oh, you're biting me. I'm helping you out of kindness, and you're saying that I'm hitting you when you're down. Really, humph. Recommending you to this film is already a compliment to you. Don't you know what your reputation is? Even if it's for my sake, the director might not choose you. Tang Yu was so angry that she stomped her feet. Suddenly, she glanced at Yun Shishir from the corner of her eye. The latter's pen paused, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She looked up and saw Tang Yu glaring at her. What was this? She got shot even when she was lying down. Yun Shishir, what are you doing in Huanyu? Signing a contract, Yun Shishir said coldly. Signing a contract? Tang Yu was shocked. You signed a contract with Huanyu just like that? Usually, it was impossible for a newcomer to sign a contract with Huanyu Entertainment right after their debut unless they had a strong background. No matter how good their qualifications were, they were the first in history to sign a contract with the headquarters right after their debut. There were two big studios under Huanyu. Usually, newcomers who just debuted would sign a contract with a studio first. Huan Yu would only seriously consider signing a contract when they had some fame. As the dream factory of the entertainment industry, Huan Yu's requirements to sign a contract were very high. Tang Yu's eyes were sharp. She saw the contract in her hand. It was indeed a model contract, and there was also a signing letter. She was so jealous that her eyes turned red. It was scary. *TCH, I don't know what kind of despicable methods she used. Who are you talking about? Without waiting for Qin Zhou to speak, Yun Shishir asked coldly, watch your mouth. Tang Yu was stunned. At the banquet, Yun Shishir was considered a gentle and soft persimmon. Why was his mouth so sharp today? He was no longer as submissive as before. Or was it because she had lost her power that even a newcomer who had yet to debut did not put her in her eyes? When a tiger leaves the plains, it will be bullied by dogs. Her lips curled into a smile. It wasn't that she bullied the weak and feared the strong. Previously at the cocktail party, she was worried about her image. As a newcomer, she naturally couldn't show off too much at such an occasion. Otherwise, offending one person was tantamount to offending a group of people. In the entertainment industry, seniority was the most important thing. If a newcomer who had yet to debut was too ostentatious, it was inevitable that he would be surrounded and suppressed. However, now that they were in private, what was there to talk about? You've got it upside down. Now, I'm the tiger and you're the dog. So what if I bullied you? Haven't you heard of the saying, beat a dog when it's down? Qin Zhou was surprised. This girl's mouth was quite vicious. Where did she learn it from? Tang Yu was so angry that she raised her hand. Qin Zhou quickly stopped her. Oh my God. This is my office. How dare you behave so atrociously? Chapter 325. It's not that I want to nag at you, but what's the point of arguing with her? She's barefoot now, so she's not afraid of you. Don't pester her endlessly. Oh. Yun Shishir nodded. Tang Yu was so angry that her eyes almost popped out. Get lost. Qin Zhou waved his hand as if he was shooing away a fly. Don't dirty my precious feng shui. What's the fuss about? Outside the office, Ji Lin stood with his arms crossed and looked at Qin Zhou and the others coldly. Yun Shishir looked toward the voice. The rumored director Ji Yanluo, was actually younger than she had expected. He was about 28 years old and wore a mature business suit. His hairstyle was meticulously styled, making him look especially energetic. He was handsome and had eyebrows like stars. His facial features were more regular and he looked very mature. However, he was just as the rumors said. He was serious and his face was cold. His aura was intimidating and his eyes were dignified. Tang Yu, you still have the face to step into Huan Yu. If you have the time to pester me, why don't you think about it yourself? Your studio can't even handle the most basic public relations crisis. Ji Lin said coldly. Currently, Huan Yu's decision to deal with you is only to terminate your contract. If you continue to pester us endlessly, you'll have to face Huan Yu's ban. Every word was like a gem and sent chills down her spine. Banning order. Once Huan Yu's ban came out, she would have no chance to make a comeback. Tang Yu was still making her final struggle. Director Ji, can't you give me another chance? This time, there was a villain who plotted against me. It won't happen again. I've been loyal to Huan Yu for so many years. Even if I didn't make any contributions, I've at least worked hard. Next time. There's a next time. Ji Lin said mercilessly, you don't have any acting skills or EQ. Not only that, but your IQ is also so low. Haven't you caused enough trouble for me? You're worthless now. Get lost. Director Ji, shut up. Ji Lin said angrily and pointed at the elevator. Get lost. Tang Yu's entire body withered. Seeing that there was no room for negotiation, he could only leave dejectedly. Before she left, she turned around and glared at Yun Shishir. Then, she stomped her feet and left. Ji Lin turned around and scolded his assistant, do you know how to do things? Wouldn't you ask the security to chase away such a person? The assistant lowered his head with a mournful expression. He accepted the scolding and did not say a word. Yun Shishir was stunned. This Ji Yanluo had a fiery temper. He probably worked overtime again last night. Working overtime? Yes. After the banquet, he had to clean up the mess. I didn't sleep well last night, and Tang Yu shamelessly came here to make trouble. How could I not be angry? With that, Qin Zhou immediately picked up the contract letter that Yun Shishir had filled out neatly and walked up to her in a flirtatious manner. Old Ji. You're so angry early in the morning. Be careful not to hurt your kidneys. Yun Shishir, Ji Lin rolled his eyes. Have you dealt with Gu Xing's matter? This time, it was Qin Zhou's turn to be listless. No, then you have the nerve to come and see me. Ji Lin poked his head. Take care of your artist. Don't think that he can look down on old Master Yang just because he has the Gu family support. Qin Zhou said gloomily, I went to the hospital to see old Master Yang yesterday. His injury is not serious. It's just a small injury. He said that he wanted me to hand the person over to him and he would deal with it himself. Chapter 326. Qin Zhou brought Yun Shishir into the director's office and retreated from the room. Sit. Wait for one more person. With that, he picked up the file and looked at it. Another person. Who could it be? Was she not the only one who signed the contract today? Yun Shishir sat on the chair and looked around carefully. The decoration of the office was simple and everything was neatly arranged. There were several celebrity portraits on the wall. They were all A-list celebrities under Huan Yu. Among them, Gu Xing's portrait was among them. There were many books and albums on the bookshelf. There was a short table in front of the sofa with a high-end tea set on it. There was a knock on the door. Yun Shishir turned her head in confusion and saw that it was Jun Mo who walked in. Seeing that it was her, Yun Shishir smiled. Jun Mo nodded, closed the door, and sat down beside her. Director Ji. Ji Lin raised his wrist and looked at his watch. He said coldly, you're always on time. You won't appear until the last minute. Jun Mo said indifferently. I just had a smoke outside. You're quite free and elegant. Ji Lin said. Jun Mo's lips curled as she turned to look at Yun Shishir and slowly reached out her hand. Hi. Her voice was not very warm or intimate, but there was a faint smile in her eyes. Yun Shishir smiled and shook her hand. Hello. Yes. Everyone is here. Let's start. Ji Lin sat at his desk and held the contract filled out by Yun Shishir. He asked indifferently, Yun Shishir. Yes, Director. Have you read the contents of the contract carefully? I have, she replied. Do you have any objections? No objections. Ji Lin asked a few more questions, and Yun Shishir answered them one by one. As a student of Media College, Ji Lin was very satisfied with her professionalism and conduct. But in the end, Ji Lin sternly stated a few conditions to her. Since you've read the contract carefully, you should be clear about the conditions. I hope you can abide by them. Understood. Ji Lin raised his head, looked at her deeply, and slowly said, Your aptitude is very good, but I need to give you a word of advice. Yun Shishir was all ears. Please speak. No matter what you were. But from the moment you signed the contract with Huan Yu, as a public figure, I hope you will be careful with your words and actions. Yun Shishir was stunned. What happened just now? I don't want it to happen again. Yes, I understand. Perhaps your impression of the entertainment industry is still limited to the reports on TV and entertainment magazines. But here, I still want to give you a piece of advice. As an artist, the company's arrangements are simple. Be obedient and do as you are told. Don't touch what you shouldn't touch. Don't make mistakes that you shouldn't understand. Jun Mo was a little surprised. In her impression, this Ji Lin did not seem like a patient person. Yet, he gave her advice. Did it seem like he was taking special care of her? Ji Lin turned to discuss the renewal of the contract with Jun Mo. Yun Shishir listened at the side. It turned out that Jun Mo's contract with Huan Yu had expired. Her aptitude was very promising, and the company hoped that she could renew the contract. In addition, her previous manager was hospitalized with cancer and the position had been empty. Ji Lin planned to assign her a new manager.